Chapter 591. At night. Gu Xingyin had already fallen into a deep sleep. Wella walked out of her room and gently closed the door. "How is she?" a cold and emotionless male voice asked. Wella didn't know why her boss was so concerned about Angela. She honestly replied, "She's very beautiful and has a good temper, but what?" Wella's voice was a little strange. She seems to be unfamiliar with some common sense things. This was something that had always puzzled her. But thinking about how she said that she had lost her memory, this was also reasonable. "Take good care of her." That male voice only said this one sentence. After Wella left, in the darkness, there was a low sigh with longing. Gu Xingyin didn't know this. The system also didn't tell her this. Kenna Pictures launched an earth-shattering publicity campaign. Whether it was the official website, major platforms, or even fashion magazines, there were advertisements for them. The content was all about the most anticipated new artist of the year. Even their competitors were speechless. This time, Kenna really put in a lot of effort for this newcomer. Even Kenna's latest film hadn't been able to enjoy such a bombardment of publicity. But the effect was equally good. Everyone knew that Kenna had recently signed a new artist and was training her in the direction of an A-list big star. Kenna's advertisements were also not modest at all. Something like, "A gift from God, the pearl of the snow mountain." Gu Xingyin was a little embarrassed. Kenna's move was really enough to whet the appetite of others. Almost everyone was looking forward to what kind of female artist they were boasting about. What kind of person was she? But after whetting the appetite of others, they were gone. There were no photos of the newcomer, no announcements of the newcomer, not even a photo of the newcomer. Shouldn't they take advantage of the current popularity to push out the newcomer? Now, if they pushed out the newcomer, they could still take advantage of the popularity and become popular. If they kept whetting the appetite of the masses, when the newcomer appeared, it wouldn't be able to satisfy people's expectations. Just the spittle alone could probably drown a person. Many people said that there were only two possibilities for Kenna to do this. 1. The higher-ups made a mistake in their decision. 2. They had great confidence in their new artist. With Kenna's status, the possibility of the former was very small. Then, it was very likely to be the latter. It had to be said that Kenna's publicity was on point this time. Regardless of whether it was in their handwriting, major platforms, or newspapers and magazines, they were all discussing Kenna, a newcomer who was said to have a great background. Wasn't this nonsense? Without a powerful background, would Kenna really be willing to spend so much resources on a newbie? The second wave of popularity was completely spontaneous. Therefore, Kenna, a mysterious newcomer who had never appeared in public, was no less popular than any A-list celebrity in terms of attention. What do you think is the background of this newcomer? The company is promoting her like this? A sexy female celebrity was chatting with another person beside her. If there were any fans here, they would recognize that this was Cynthia Gillard, who had become popular with a movie some time ago. She was a stunner known for her sex appeal. When she said this, her eyes were full of jealousy that couldn't be hidden. Chapter 592. The actress opposite her was even more famous than her. She was Modis Dawson, the top actress of Kenner who had won an Oscar. Modis Dawson did not say much after hearing Gerard's words. She had some guesses about the newcomer's identity. She was probably the girl that Thomas had brought over personally that day. When she thought of that girl's face, she could not help but be distracted for a moment. It was simply too shocking. However, at her position, no matter how outstanding the younger generation in the company was, they could not shake her position. She pretended not to hear Modis's subtle provocation. This idiot. The company was obviously trying to promote the newcomer. It was okay to ask around at this time, but if she wanted to trip her up, she was really stupid. That's right. Angela was a newcomer. Even within the company, other than a few higher-ups who knew about her, her identity was also a mystery. Gu Xingyin was preparing for this body's first movie. The annual blockbuster that Kenner was investing in was aiming for an Oscar. This movie was Kenner's most expensive movie of the day. The cast was even more luxurious. Most of them were signed artists under Kenner. There were also a few supporting actors who were hired from other places. Modis Dawson was the female lead of this movie. The male lead was also Augustus Monroe, who had won an Oscar before. He was one of the dream lovers of all women in the world. The director, Ken Peter, was in a bad mood. He had spent a lot of effort on this movie. He was also the one who had selected the actors. However, just as he was about to settle on the role, the biggest investor of the movie, Kenner Fortress, came in. It would have been fine if it was just a casual role. However, they wanted a very important supporting role in the entire movie. This was an epic fantasy movie based on the novel of the same name. The role that Kenner wanted was the first villain in the movie, a stunning beauty. His original choice was the most beautiful person in romance, who had been voted by the audience and media as the most beautiful person. This was because the character herself was the most beautiful person. A smile from the princess in the movie could make 100 flowers bloom. How could such a character be so easily replaced by someone else? He even quarreled with the investor because of this. However, the investor, who was usually very easy to talk to, was surprisingly stubborn this time. He repeatedly emphasized that the candidate they sent this time was definitely in line with the character of the princess. Well, in the end Peter gave in and agreed to let them bring someone over for him to look at. But that was all. If he didn't think it was suitable, he would never let people appear in his movies. The main cast of the movie had already received the news. Some of the smarter ones had already roughly guessed the identity of this heaven-sent actor. The only person who could force Peter to give in and was also a newcomer was probably Kenna, the newcomer who had been hidden so well. Quite a few people were waiting there to watch. What exactly did the other party look like, to actually have such great ability? The door opened, and everyone's gaze turned towards it. The one who came out was Thomas's signature smiling face. Everyone is welcoming me with such a big formation. Everyone rolled their eyes in their hearts. Old man, go away. We want to see the person behind you. Then, the person they were looking for finally appeared behind Thomas. Everyone turned their attention to her once again. However, the person who came in was wearing a thick hoodie. The wide hood covered his face and a pair of huge sunglasses. They couldn't see anything at all. Chapter 593. At most, he could tell that the other party was a tall and slender woman. Everyone watched as Thomas led his men into the director's lounge. Ken Peter was sitting inside with a cold face. He was a stubborn old man. Even though he had agreed to Kenna's request, he was still in a bad mood. Hey! Old man, look, I've brought her here. Thomas seemed to be very familiar with him. Peter's expression softened a little. I'll say this first. If she doesn't fit the image of the character, even if you brought her here, I won't use her. Thomas was full of confidence. Don't worry, I bet you'll be satisfied with her. Angela. Gu Xingyin took off the sunglasses on the bridge of her nose and pulled down the hood. Her long, smooth blonde hair slid down her shoulders and fell to her waist. Peter poured himself a glass of water casually and glanced at Gu Xingyin's direction. It was this one glance that caused him to be stunned. The girl who stood there quietly had long blonde hair that reached her waist. She was like the most beautiful rice ear in the harvest season. Her blue eyes reflected the color of the entire sky. She was surprised to see the outsiders, but she immediately showed them a friendly smile. Joshua felt that at that moment, he heard the sound of flowers blooming in his heart. This was the description of the male protagonist, Joshua, when he first met Princess Utana in the original novel. Ken Peter felt that the beautiful princess must have walked out of the script and appeared in front of him. Ken. My old man, your shoes are in trouble. Thomas's gloating voice woke him up. The water in the quilt overflowed and flowed onto his shoes. But Ken Peter didn't care about this. He put the quilt on the table and wiped his hands with a tissue. He walked to Gu Xingyin excitedly. What's your name? He asked. Angela. Angela, good name. He reached out his right hand to Gu Xingyin. I wish us a happy cooperation. Was this considered overboard? Gu Xingyin blinked and reached out to shake hands with Ken Peter. Thomas, who was standing by the side, said unhappily, Ken. Earlier, you said that you wanted to see the person first. If you weren't satisfied, you wouldn't agree. Now, what do you think about our Angela compared to the actress you have your eyes on? Peter glared at him and said, if you had sent me Angela's photo earlier, I wouldn't have had to go through so much trouble. He was very excited now. Originally, he had high expectations for this movie, but the actress playing Princess Utana had not been chosen yet. God's love had allowed him to find such a person who fit the original novel perfectly. One had to know that in the original novel, the most controversial character among the fans was the villain princess who was both good and evil. In terms of popularity, Princess Utana was not any less popular than the male and female leads. A smile appeared on Thomas's face. He knew that as long as Angela was here, that perfectionist Ken would not have any objections. No one else could fit Princess Utana's image as well as Angela. Chapter 594. Even if Gu Xingyin's acting didn't meet expectations, Peter would at most cut her scenes a little. The actors waiting outside were all waiting for the result. Thomas walked out first. Seeing the smile on his face, many people had already guessed the answer. It seemed that director Peter had agreed. This made them even more curious. After all, director Peter had written all his dissatisfaction on his face. What kind of charm did this newcomer have to make this stubborn old man compromise? Soon, they knew why. Gu Xingyin walked out with Peter. But at that moment, everyone automatically ignored Peter's existence. In everyone's eyes, there was only Gu Xingyin, who seemed to be glowing all over. Augustus Monroe, who played the male lead, muttered, I finally know why Joshua couldn't be ruthless when he found out that Utana was lying to him. Which man could be ruthless to such a woman? The actresses had different reactions. Some were appreciative, some were jealous, and some maintained a smile. A few of them didn't look good. Would anyone really notice them if they acted in the same movie with such a person? Peter clapped his hands and said to everyone, let's welcome the last actor of The Holy Ring. Regardless of what they thought, the actors all smiled to show their welcome. Augustus Monroe directly said to Gu Xingyin, if there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me. Gu Xingyin smiled at him, thank you, Mr. Monroe. Augustus covered his chest exaggeratedly, God, I'm sure I was shot by the Cupid's arrow. I've been captured by your smile, Miss Angela. His performance made many people laugh. Modis Dawson also held Gu Xingyin's hand intimately, you and I are both taught by Thomas. If you have any questions, you can ask me too. Most of the actors and actresses present were under Kenna, so of course, they wouldn't try to undermine Gu Xingyin. In fact, they had to support her from behind. At this time, Ken Peter said, everyone knows that the list of actors for The Holy Ring has been announced a long time ago. Only Utana's name has remained a mystery. I've decided to keep her a secret until the filming starts. This meant that they should keep their mouths shut when they returned. When he saw Gu Xingyin, Ken Peter had this idea in his mind. He wanted Utana to be one of the most mysterious people in this movie's publicity period. If it wasn't for Gu Xingyin, he might not have done this, but Angela's appearance gave him hope. Heidi was an ordinary high school student. She was a fan of The Holy Ring. Not only her, but her father and brother were also fans of the book. Ever since the news of the filming of The Holy Ring was released, she had been paying close attention to the news. Her favorite character was not the male lead, Joshua, or the female lead, Helen. It was the first villain, Princess Utana, who lived in the castle in the sky. The person who would play the princess was also one of the things she paid attention to the most. In Heidi's mind, the ideal actress for Utana was the first beauty of romance, Sophia. Only the first beauty could portray the charm of Princess Utana, right? Heidi thought, although she felt that Sophia was lacking something. Many people had the same idea as Heidi. Chapter 595. After dinner today, she habitually opened the official website of The Holy Ring. She found that it was flooded with comments. It turned out that the list of actors had been announced. Heidi's eyes lit up and she quickly scrolled down the list. Joshua, Augustus Monroe. Helen, Modis Dawson. Utana. What? Heidi thought that she had seen wrongly and looked again. That's right, there was a long line of question marks behind the name of Utana. What did this mean? Heidi scrolled down the comments and sure enough, half of the fans were questioning what the director was doing. Heidi couldn't help but leave a comment. She wanted to know what this meant. However, there was no response from the official website. Heidi logged in and found that it was also flooded with comments. Many fans of The Holy Ring were discussing who would play Utana. The number of fans discussing Utana's role even exceeded the two main leads. At 8:00 in the evening, the official website of The Holy Ring finally responded. The most fitting character of Utana, below the bold title was the words of the director, Ken Peter, good news for the fans of The Holy Ring. We have found the actor who best fits Utana's image. See you on December 1st next year. Below was some information about The Holy Ring, including the costume guide, budget, and so on. However, what the fans were most concerned about was who would play Utana. No. Well, if you don't tell us who it is, a photo will do, right? Also no. They didn't reveal anything and just used the banner of the most fitting character of Utana. All the fans' curiosity was piqued. The most fitting character of Utana? One had to know that in the original work, Utana was called a gift from God to the human world. Her beauty was completely beyond human imagination and she lived in the castle in the sky all year round. She didn't know what was good and evil and only relied on her own preferences. She had a kind of arrogant and cruel naivety to everyone. Could the crew really find such an actress? Was it the appearance or the temperament that matched the original work? Or was this a publicity stunt created by the production crew in order to attract more attention? Some anti-fans were already cursing on the official website. There were also some fans of Sophia. They had always thought that the role of Utana would go to Sophia. Only Sophia's beauty could make up for Utana, but the production team did not choose her. Another group of fans began to leave comments under the other actors and actresses, asking about the situation of the actor who played Utana. Of course, the actors who had been warned by Peter would not reveal any information about Gu Xingyin. Only Modis posted, the news about Utana is a secret. I can only say that she won't disappoint everyone. I'm a fan of The Holy Ring and I can tell everyone that director Peter was right. She was born to play the role of Utana. Augustus also replied to the message. He did not write as much as Modis, only a short sentence. I saw Princess Utana standing in front of me. The two main actors of The Holy Ring had expressed their approval of the actress who played Utana. This made the fans even more curious. Just what kind of beauty did she have to be to gain everyone's approval? Do you dare to say it all at once? Chapter 596. However, no matter how much the fans roared in their hearts, the entire crew of The Holy Ring did not reveal anything. On the contrary, the fans were intrigued. They went to the official website every day, looking forward to the day when the crew would be merciful and release the stills. In the end, there really was. Augustus's Joshua was full of heroic spirit and extraordinarily handsome. Modis's Helen was beautiful, affectionate, and extremely intelligent. Finally, it was Utana's turn. Utana only had a back view. The back view in a white dress was surrounded by a sea of flowers. Under the kiss of the sun, it seemed to glow. People could not help but want her to look back. Why don't you turn around and look? The fans expressed that their hearts were tired. A fan left a comment below, I have already seen through the sinister intentions of the crew. I have no hope. I am only waiting for the premiere next year. I admit that you've successfully piqued my curiosity. If Utana can't satisfy me, then just you wait. I will use all the vulgar words I have learned in my life to greet you all. His comment caused many people to feel the same way. Peter smiled as he looked at the various data that his assistant sent to him. Very good, the publicity of The Holy Ring was better than he had imagined. Gu Xingyin began to follow the production crew around the world for filming. What surprised Peter was that at first, he was worried that Angela was a newcomer and might not be good at acting. He had already prepared for her to only be responsible for her beauty. After all, even if she was a vase, as long as she had a face like Angela, there would be a lot of people willing to pay for her beauty. However, some people might be born to eat this bowl of rice. Not only did she have an unattainable beauty, but she also had an aura that ordinary people could not compare to. At the beginning of filming, Angela obviously made all kinds of mistakes. She was clearly at the level of a layman. However, what shocked the director and the other actors the most was that no matter what kind of mistake she made, as long as you corrected her once, she would never make the same mistake a second time. Even Modi's had to sigh when he talked about her. I may be witnessing the rise of a legend. As for Peter, Peter was overjoyed. He originally had high expectations for the Holy Ring, but after seeing Gu Xingyin's performance, he felt that he could set his goal even higher. It was perfect. In the later stages of the movie, no one could see any trace of a newcomer in this girl. Augustus was the one who acted with Gu Xingyin the most. He was even brought into the scene by Gu Xingyin, who was in the zone. He felt that he was Joshua, and the one he loved deeply was the beautiful princess. Augustus looked at Gu Xingyin with more and more infatuation. The crew had already sensed his thoughts, but looking at the other person, it was clear that he had no romantic feelings for Augustus. The officials of the Holy Ring did a good job. Every once in a while, they would release some news so that the fans would continue to pay attention to it and not forget about it. However, Princess Utana, who was the most anticipated, left people with only a back view that caused endless fanciful thoughts. No one, including Gu Xingyin, knew that there was someone who knew her whereabouts and every little bit of her daily life. Chapter 597. While many people were paying attention to it, the trailer of The Holy Ring was released. The special effects of the movie did not disappoint the audience. This time, Peter had a huge investment from Kenna. Whether it was the special effects, the soundtrack, or the post-production, they were all selected by the world's top team. The effect of the movie could be seen from the audience's reaction. Many fans of The Holy Ring had the same reaction after watching the trailer. Why did the movie have to wait until December to be released? Of course, as everyone expected, the crew once again whetted the audience's appetite. The audience was already familiar with Joshua's and Modi's appearances, but they were still pleasantly surprised by the dynamic trailer. Then, for the first time, the crew was generous with the role of Utana. The trailer revealed half of Utana's face. The last scene of the trailer was when Joshua mistakenly entered the Sky Castle and saw Utana for the first time. The handsome warrior looked at the girl in front of him with amazement and infatuation. The camera zoomed in and moved up from the other party's skirt. The audience also held their breaths. The gorgeous skirt, the beautiful collarbone, and then the audience saw the delicate outline of the chin and the slightly upturned corners of the lips. When the whole person was about to come out, the scene abruptly stopped. It was said that the day the trailer of The Holy Ring was released, the sales of keyboards in the entire United States suddenly soared. Many emotional fans said, "Peter, you'd better not let me see you before the release of The Holy Ring. Otherwise, you'd better be careful of your personal safety." More people turned their attention to the movie. Some professionals pointed out that the filming of The Holy Ring, this time, based on the special effects and visuals shown in the trailer, could very well become an epic fantasy masterpiece. Fans of the original novel of The Holy Ring expressed that they had been afraid that filming the movie would ruin the novel. However, after watching the trailer, they were filled with anticipation for the movie. I'm a fan of The Holy Ring. Of course, I'm a fan of the novel. Ever since I heard that The Holy Ring was going to be made into a movie, I rejected it because I didn't believe that anyone could film the complete The Holy Ring. However, after I saw the trailer, my thoughts changed. I've watched this trailer more than 10 times, and now I have two thoughts. First, why is there still 3 months until the premiere? Secondly, do you dare to release a picture of my goddess, Utana? While The Holy Ring caused a wave of excitement outside, the filming of the movie was coming to an end. Yeah. The crisp sound of glasses clinking could be heard. The movie was finally completed. As usual, Peter spent a lot of money and invited the actors to the most luxurious 5-star hotel nearby for a meal. Augustus also invited everyone to his house for a party in the evening. The best actor might have his own properties all over the world because he often had to travel all over the world. Of course, no one would refuse. The movie is selling like hotcakes. Peter, the old man, was drunk. He was still mumbling as he hugged the wine bottle. The young actors and actresses were showing off their figures in the swimming pool. Gu Xingyin didn't particularly like this kind of noisy gathering. She took a glass of wine and leaned on the side to watch them play. Angela. Augustus's voice came from behind her. Hearing his voice, Gu Xingyin felt a headache coming on. Chapter 598. Most of the people in the crew had already seen through Augustus's feelings for her. Augustus had restrained himself a little at first, but as they approached the end of the shoot, he became more and more unrestrained. Peter would not interfere in the private affairs of actors. Moreover, if Joshua and Utana could really have a spark in the Holy Ring, it would be a huge piece of news for him to publicize. Gu Xingyin turned around and smiled politely. Mr. Monroe, are you not going to play with everyone? Call me Augustus, Angela. I thought we were already friends. Augustus showed a slightly melancholy smile. His appearance was top-notch even in the entire Western entertainment circle. If his appearance was spread out, it would probably cause all the female fans to scream. Augustus came over to have a showdown. Westerners did not know how to be reserved, and he felt that he could not hold back anymore. Angela, you know what I mean, don't you? Augustus looked at her affectionately. You are the Utana in my heart, Angela. Can I have the qualifications to protect you in the future? When he said this, his deep green eyes were full of affection that could drown people, making them reluctant to reject him. Gu Xingyin was silent for a moment before saying, but there is no result between Utana and Joshua. I'm sorry, Augustus. The hope in Augustus's eyes dimmed. In fact, he had already expected that Angela did not like him. He pulled out a smile. There is nothing to be sorry about, Angela. This is something that requires mutual consent. Gu Xingyin appreciated his open-mindedness. Augustus continued, if I'm not wrong, Angela, you don't have a boyfriend, right? In that case, can I sign up, and when you have the idea of a romantic relationship, consider me? He smiled and said to Gu Xingyin, I promise, I won't pester you, and I won't bring you any trouble. But, Angela, I don't think I can let you go in a short time. If you have a boyfriend, you must tell me immediately and let me give up. This man was so honest that it was impossible to refuse. Gu Xingyin sighed. She didn't have any intention to have any unnecessary relationship with the people in the mission world. I'm sorry, Augustus. Since he was destined not to have one, he might as well extinguish his hope from the very beginning. Augustus didn't expect the other party to be so straightforward, not even giving him a chance. He shrugged his shoulders and a bright smile appeared on his face. Gu Xingyin saw a trace of sadness in his eyes. Come on, have a drink with me. Augustus looked at him with a smile. Now, don't reject me anymore. Comfort this lovelorn old man's heart. He was really a gentleman. Gu Xingyin knew that he didn't want her to be too embarrassed. She raised her glass and clinked it with his. Augustus, if you are willing, there are countless good girls in the world waiting to have a romantic relationship with you. Augustus smiled but didn't say anything. There were so many girls in the world, but there was only one Angela. Chapter 599. The next day, the main actors started to say goodbye to each other. They all had their own schedules and it would probably be the premiere when they saw each other again. During this period, the main actors even had to follow the crew to do some promotion for the movie. However, as the most mysterious actress, Gu Xingyin definitely did not need to show up. The next day, she followed Thomas back to York City on a plane. Thomas told her a piece of good news. Because of her special identity, she did not have any activities before the movie was released, so she could rest for 3 months. But she had to be careful in public places where there were many people. Although her face wasn't very well known, Angela's beauty was too eye-catching. Gu Xingyin nodded. If she really did not want others to see through her, it was very simple. A small disguise spell would do. She was not the only artist under Thomas. After giving some instructions, he left in a hurry. Gu Xingyin tidied herself up and got ready to have a good sleep. She even specifically asked Wella not to wake her up the next morning. In the past half a year, she had never had a good rest on set. It was a dreamless night. However, Gu Xingyin immediately realized that something was wrong when she woke up. This was not her room. She opened her eyes. It was pitch black. The thick curtains covered the window, making it impossible to tell whether it was day or night. However, the vision of an angel was not affected. Gu Xingyin clearly saw a man sitting by her bed and looking at her. She immediately became alert. Not to mention anything else, as an angel, even if her body was seriously injured and most of her power was sealed, her vigilance should not be so weak. She did not even notice that she was in a different place in her sleep. Not to mention, even the system did not remind her at all. Right. The system. Gu Xingyin called out to the system in her heart. There was no response. The system seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. This man was definitely not an ordinary person. You're awake? The man's deep voice sounded. Gu Xingyin did not make a sound, but the vigilance in her heart was getting stronger. If he was really an ordinary person, he would not be able to tell whether she was awake or not. The lights in the room were turned on. But the man clearly sat there without moving. In the next second, Gu Xingyin was standing on the ground. Under the bright environment, she could clearly see the man's appearance without any hindrance. He was very young, probably in his 20s. He was very handsome. In terms of appearance, he might be comparable to Augustus, but the two of them had completely different temperaments. Augustus had the kind of gentle and affectionate appearance. When he smiled, he was handsome and charming that no woman could resist. Even Gu Xingyin felt oppressed by this man's aura. This kind of aura could only be possessed by someone who had been in control of everything for a long time. His gaze was cold and indifferent, as if everything was nothing but an ant in his eyes. Who are you? As she said this, Gu Xingyin looked around the room she was in and made a simple judgment. This should be the man's home. Who am I? The man repeated her question and shifted his gaze to Gu Xingyin's face. Chapter 600. In the end, Gu Xingyin didn't know who this man was. Because when she asked him, he only looked at her with a gentle gaze. Then, he reached out his hand and gently tucked her loose blonde hair behind her head. Then, Gu Xingyin lost consciousness again. In a daze, she heard a man's voice in her ear. Don't let other men get close to you, don't be tempted by other men, I will be angry. When she woke up, she was already in her room. She was wearing the clothes before she went to bed, and there was no trace of anyone entering or leaving the room. Everything that had happened before was like an illusory dream. But Gu Xingyin knew that it wasn't a dream. Those touches were so real, and there was that strange lotus fragrance on the other person's body. She looked at the time, it was already 5:00 in the afternoon. She had slept for a whole day and night. Gu Xingyin got up, and she didn't feel dizzy after sleeping for a long time. Wella was watching TV in the living room. You're finally awake, Angela. Wella greeted her happily. The food is already ready, wait a moment. Wella was about to go to the kitchen, but Gu Xingyin stopped her. Wait a minute, Wella. Gu Xingyin asked, did anyone enter my room while I was asleep? Wella was confused, I was at home the whole time, no. She looked at Gu Xingyin in surprise. Did you lose something, Angela? Although she knew that Wella probably didn't know, Gu Xingyin was still a bit disappointed. She smiled and shook her head, no, I just had a nightmare. It was said that she had 3 months of rest, but Thomas came less than a week later. Of course, he was here to look for Gu Xingyin. Angela, you said that you forgot the past, so I didn't ask you about your talent. Today, Peter contacted me and asked if you would like to try singing the theme song for The Holy Ring. Everyone knew how beautiful Gu Xingyin's voice was. Even when she was filming, a composer in the crew was amazed when he heard her voice. When I heard Angela speak, I was reminded of the singing bird in the fairy tale. It is a bird that sings for God. The composer also tried his best to persuade Gu Xingyin to become a singer. He even said that he was willing to create the most suitable music for her. However, at that time, Gu Xingyin had just started filming The Holy Ring. She didn't want to leave a bad impression on the director, so she didn't accept his offer. She didn't expect that Peter would personally invite her to sing the theme song. Thomas said, "It's a composer from the production team of The Holy Ring." After he composed the song, he expressed that he must invite you to sing it. Peter also heard your voice before, and since it would be a good gimmick for you to sing, he agreed to let you give it a try. Thomas couldn't hide the joy on his face. "You have to work hard, Angela. This is a rare opportunity." He didn't tell Gu Xingyin that Peter just wanted her to give it a try. If she didn't pass, he would still find a professional singer to sing. For Peter, who wanted everything to be perfect, he would never allow the movie to be ruined by the theme song after so much effort and preparation. Chapter 601. Gu Xingyin's goal was to make Angela a miracle worker. Singing? No other creature could compare to an angel. As an angel favored by God, they were born to be proficient in all kinds of arts, especially singing. Every day, every angel would sing a hymn for God. Gu Xingyin's performance was completely beyond Peter's expectations. The composer who invited her was even looking at her with sparkling eyes. Thomas, however, found a business opportunity. So, after discussing it with Peter, they made a bold decision. They would create a song for each of the protagonists of The Holy Ring, and add the theme song and ending song to create an album that belonged to The Holy Ring. This was a challenge that no one had ever attempted in the history of film. The cost of producing such an album was very high, and the market for such a limited music was too small. It was not worth it at all. Unless there was a big hit. This possibility was too small. Peter also hesitated, but he received a message from Kenna. He fully supported the production of such an album, and there was only one condition: let Angela sing. Even Peter, who was used to seeing all kinds of backstage actors, began to think carefully this time. Who was this Angela? Why was Kenna willing to go to such extent for her? Peter vaguely knew who the owner behind Kenna was. It was a behemoth that ordinary people could not imagine. A simple move by such a group could cause a drastic change in the structure of the world. Could it be that Angela was the daughter of a super-rich family? Peter shook his head and gave up thinking about it. What he needed to do now was to let the best team under him create the perfect album for The Holy Ring, and for Angela, the lead singer. Anyway, the investors were willing to spend money, so why would Peter be polite to them? 3 months had finally passed in the midst of all the fans' anxious wait. On December 1st, The Holy Ring premiered. Gu Xingyin, the lead actors, and director Peter were waiting for the premiere to begin in the theater in York City. Gu Xingyin had only seen the half-finished product, so she was still looking forward to this movie. Accompanied by a stunning soundtrack, the story slowly unfolded. Even though he had participated in the filming and knew what kind of plot this movie would have, Gu Xingyin was still shocked. She used to be Yuan Kui, so her appreciation of movies was naturally not bad. From beginning to end, she could only exclaim, "It's perfect." Peter, a stubborn old man who pursued perfection in everything, finally produced such a masterpiece in his lifetime. The forums, the official website of The Holy Ring, and other places had all exploded. Many of the audience members who failed to get tickets had been waiting at these places. Since they couldn't watch the premiere in person, they could only wait for the latest news. However, in the first 10 minutes or so, there were many enthusiastic audiences who had entered the cinema to share their experiences and express their opinions. However, by the time the movie was 24 minutes old, everyone had forgotten about it. At this moment, they only knew one thing. Just like Joshua on the screen, there was only the princess in the white dress left in the whole world. Chapter 602. While the audience in the cinema was immersed in the plot, the fans on the forums and blogs were dumbfounded. What happened? Why did it suddenly become quiet? Did the cinema suddenly cut off the internet? The fans said that they didn't get a ticket, so they could only wait for the live broadcast of the audience. This sudden change really made people very anxious. 10 minutes later, the forum exploded again. This time, it was even more popular than the last time. The entire Holy Ring forum was completely flooded. All the topics were only one: Princess Utana. Love doesn't need a reason. I finally know why Peter said that he found the best actress for Utana. Let's not talk about it anymore. I announce that I have found my true love. Utana, my goddess. When I learned that Peter found a newcomer to play Utana, I actually refused, but now, I'm glad. Peter, you're awesome. I love Utana, look at my ID. The onlookers were confused. They didn't understand why these people suddenly went crazy after a 10-minute blackout, as if they had taken the wrong medicine. There were also some fans who had already guessed a clue from their reactions. Could it be that the actress playing Utana was really that beautiful? Some fans of the number one beauty of romance came out to express their dissatisfaction. Those who praise Utana, can that actress be as beautiful as our Sophia? I think it must have been Peter's biggest mistake not to choose Sophia. However, someone came out to slap their face. The person who said this sentence is definitely not in front of the big screen now, otherwise, you wouldn't say such a ridiculous statement. I'm a fan of Sophia. Previous poster, don't try to blacklist our Sophia. I'm really convinced by Utana. This group of people was wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. However, the audience who had been waiting for a long time were already stomping their feet. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Why don't you post a photo? Even if it's not a high-definition photo, you can just take one with your phone. Finally, a kind-hearted person appeared. This kind-hearted person was none other than the publicity team of Holy Ring. For the first time, a video of Utana was released on the official website. This video was only a short 1-minute clip. It was at the 24th minute of the movie when Joshua saw Princess Utana. After Joshua got lost in the forest, he stepped on the soft grass and finally saw a gorgeous castle. The sun shone on the grass in the garden in front of the castle, and a girl in a white dress was picking flowers. She turned around when she heard the noise. The camera zoomed in, and Angela's flawless face entered the audience's line of sight. She seemed to be surprised for a moment, and a trace of curiosity flashed through her clear blue eyes. Then, a friendly smile slowly appeared on her face. It stopped abruptly. The video, which was less than a minute long, was viewed hundreds of millions of times in just half an hour. After that, the server of the Holy Ring website was paralyzed. Many of the audience members, who had watched it once, twice, or thrice and were prepared to watch it countless times, were dumbfounded. There were also a lot of people who heard the news but didn't get to see it in time. Chapter 603. Gu Xingyin was on fire. Perhaps it should be said that Utana was on fire. Before the movie was released, everyone, including Gu Xingyin herself, knew that she would be popular. However, no one expected that the fire would burn so big. The box office of The Holy Ring broke 1 billion in 1 week. Almost all of a sudden, The Holy Ring was swept up in a frenzy all over the world. Peter was very confident in his movie, which was very likely to be the pinnacle of his life. He knew that this movie was likely to leave its mark in film history and was likely to set a record. However, even he did not expect that the box office would explode so much. In the past few days, the corners of his mouth had not relaxed at all. In the entire movie, the most popular person was not the male lead, Augustus, nor the female lead, Modis, but Gu Xingyin, who had never appeared in front of the public. As long as there was a discussion about The Holy Ring, the topic would inevitably lead to the peerless Princess Utana. Fanatical fans began to search for information about this actress named Angela on the internet. The name Angela directly rushed to the top of the trending searches on major websites. However, there was very little information that could be found. The latest news was updated by Kenna on the day The Holy Ring was released. The photos of her on the train had also been exposed. So it was her. At that time, Angela seemed to be just a young girl who had just come to the city. In other words, she was really a pure newcomer. Kenna's competitors gritted their teeth and secretly hated themselves for being a step too late. As Gu Xingyin's agent, Thomas was very busy during this period. All kinds of endorsement contracts flew towards him like snowflakes. Fortunately, he was a veteran agent and was quite experienced in dealing with this kind of thing. Those that were not good enough, delete. Those that had a bad reputation, delete. Those that had an impact on the artist's image, delete. In the end, Thomas was busy for a whole week before he arranged Gu Xingyin's schedule for the next half a year. Gu Xingyin also opened a personal account under Thomas's suggestion. On the first day, the number of fans on the account exceeded 1 million. In the evening, Gu Xingyin was sitting on the bed with her eyes closed. If someone were to take a closer look, they would discover that her body was faintly exuding a layer of pale white halo. At the same time, countless tiny light spots were surging towards her from all corners of the world. This was the energy that her fans gave her. The tiny specks of light disappeared into Gu Xingyin's body, healing the wounds on her body and soul that were invisible to the naked eye. This feeling was simply too wonderful. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but moan comfortably. A white light flashed across her body, and a transparent barrier enveloped the entire room. At the same time, 6 huge pure white wings spread out from her body, and she floated up into the air. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes in surprise. She did not expect that the power of these fans gathered together would be so great. According to this trend, she silently felt the speed of recovery of her injuries in the afternoon. It would take at most 3 years for the injuries on her body to be completely healed. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. Suddenly, the whole room darkened. Gu Xingyin could feel that she had lost her perception of the outside world. Chapter 604. Her heart skipped a beat, and she had a vague guess. As expected, a man in a black suit had silently appeared in her room. Gu Xingyin's eyes were filled with vigilance. She didn't care that the other party had seen Angela's real body. How could someone who could break through the 6-winged angel's barrier be an ordinary person? Can you tell me who you are? Gu Xingyin wanted to ask the system directly, but ever since that night, when she was brought to the room by the man, the system seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. No matter how she called out, there was no response. The man wasn't in a hurry to answer her question. Instead, he stared at her with her wings open and floating in the air without blinking. Very beautiful. He praised. He opened his arms and made a gesture as if he was hugging her. Gu Xingyin's body flew towards him uncontrollably and fell into his arms. Gu Xingyin didn't want to resist this man from the depths of her soul. It wasn't an instinct of Angela's body, but from the depths of her soul. I already told you last time that I'm your lover. The man hugged her and sighed. But I really don't know you. Gu Xingyin furrowed her brows. She couldn't lie to herself. She longed for this embrace that was filled with the light lotus fragrance. But she didn't like this feeling of not being able to control herself. Follow your heart, the man said in a low voice. Gu Xingyin heard a name that made her tremble. Ah-in. You called me, Shu. Her lips were suddenly covered by a finger. The man said softly, don't say it. You'll be noticed. He didn't say what would be noticed, but Gu Xingyin understood. It was the law that was constantly monitoring this world. He called her Ah-in. He actually knew that she wasn't Angela. Gu Xingyin's eyelashes fluttered. Although she didn't have any memories, her heart was filled with joy and satisfaction. She didn't know where this feeling came from, but she indulged herself in this feeling. A thought suddenly rose in her mind. She looked at the man in front of her seriously. He still had that indifferent look on his face, cold and noble. Can you tell me that you love me? Gu Xingyin looked at him without blinking. A trace of surprise flashed through the man's eyes. Even if she had no memory, she would still subconsciously act coquettishly towards him. He couldn't seem to refuse her request at all. He thought helplessly. The man hugged her waist and rubbed the base of her angel wings with both hands. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but tremble. This was the most sensitive part of an angel's body. The man gently lowered his head, and his hot breath fell on her ear. I love you, Ian. The last two words appeared directly in her mind. Gu Xingyin took the initiative to kiss him. She felt like she was going crazy. She knew nothing about this man, not even his name. Such a dangerous man, her rationality told her that she should be vigilant and avoid him. But she couldn't help it. The desire from the depths of her soul made her want to get close to him. It was as if a voice in her heart was telling her, don't be afraid of him. He won't hurt you. You love him. She loved him. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes. If this was really a dream, she wouldn't wake up again. Chapter 605. When Gu Xingyin woke up the next day, there was still a smile on her face. That person's words seemed to linger in her ears. You're too outstanding. The way those men look at you makes me want to destroy the world. So direct and domineering. She asked about his identity, but he only told her his identity in this world. Gu Xingyin finally knew why it was so easy for her to sign Kenna. She also knew why Kenna had been giving her the green light. He had been silently supporting her from behind. She thought about the rumors that people had about her, saying that she had an incredible backer. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. Looking at it like that, it really was true. As for his true identity, the man said that it wasn't suitable for her to know yet. He couldn't even say his name in this world. Even if it sounded in Gu Xingyin's mind, she couldn't. She got up in a good mood and saw Weena, who was preparing breakfast. She knew that Wella wasn't simple, but she didn't think that she would be the person that man put by her side. Gu Xingyin didn't plan on exposing her. Host. A voice sounded in Gu Xingyin's ears. Gu Xingyin hurriedly asked, System, what's wrong? The system's white light flashed. Nothing, just sleeping for a while. Gu Xingyin suddenly asked, System, tell me, did I lose a part of my memory? The system was very honest. Yes, host. Gu Xingyin's eyes sharpened. Is it about my lover? The system didn't say anything. Gu Xingyin already knew the system's way of doing things. His silence was a tacit agreement. Gu Xingyin asked, why did you erase my memory? Can you restore it for me? The system replied, Host, I'm very sorry. In this world, I can't restore your memory. Once the mission is over, you'll naturally remember everything. Gu Xingyin thought of the man who was so strong that it made her heart tremble. Is it related to him? It was obvious who she was referring to. The system once again replied with silence. Gu Xingyin fell silent. The system thought that the host was angry. After a while, it said, Host, please don't think too much. Erasing your memory is out of kindness. Gu Xingyin was not angry. She understood the system well. After so many worlds, she had long regarded the system as her good partner. She knew that the system would not do anything to harm her. She was just wondering why it had to erase her memories of her lover. However, she didn't have any memory of this, so she couldn't find any trace of it. Her lover seemed to be very mysterious. Moreover, the system seemed to know of his existence. The system said that he would know everything after completing the mission. Gu Xingyin could only suppress his curiosity and wait for the moment when the secret would be revealed. She put all her heart and soul into completing the mission. The most important thing right now was to gather more fans and heal Angela's injuries as soon as possible. Gu Xingyin received a notification from Thomas that there would be a press conference for the Holy Ring next Monday. She had been specially told by Peter that she had to be there. This would also be the first time that Angela, who played Utana, appeared in public. Thomas attached great importance to Gu Xingyin's appearance this time. He wanted Princess Utana in the Holy Ring to be as beautiful as she was in the real world. Chapter 606. The venue of the press conference was already packed with fans. Their hands were filled with all kinds of posters and even banners. Gu Xingyin had met up with the main cast in advance. The moment Mortis saw her, he put on a hopeless expression. It's over, Angela. I already have a feeling that I'm going to be abandoned by the fans today. Shock flashed through the eyes of the others, and a few actresses even joked, "Angela, I must sit further away from you today." As expected, when they entered the arena, they caused a huge wave of screams and screams. "Utana! Utana!" If you listened carefully, you would find that the fans' voices had drowned out the other voices. Gu Shengyin only felt that there was a lot of warm energy gathering towards her from all directions. She couldn't help but smile. There was a burst of gasps around. The media's shutters couldn't wait to use up all the film at this moment. Modi's was a little helpless. This was the first time she was so invisible since she became the movie queen. When the director and actors were seated, the media's opportunity came. "Director Peter, where did you find Miss Angela?" "Miss Angela, you became famous with the movie, The Holy Ring. What do you think about it?" "Director Peter, The Holy Ring is a big hit. How much do you think the global box office will be this time?" "Augustus, in the plot, Joshua has always been secretly in love with Princess Utana. Your deep affection in the movie moved countless people. May I ask, do you and Miss Angela hope to be a couple in real life?" "Miss Modis, I'm your fan. Do you think you can win the movie queen title again with The Holy Ring?" Augustus and Modis were familiar with dealing with such situations. Needless to say, Peter was quite good at dealing with the media. Only Angela was a newcomer with no experience. When Augustus heard some questions, he looked at Gu Shengyin worriedly, worried that she couldn't handle it. However, it turned out that he was overthinking. Gu Shengyin maintained a gentle and decent smile on her face. When she encountered some questions that were really difficult to answer, she would directly wink at the reporter and act cute. The reporter was instantly dazed by her charm. When he came to his senses, he found that he had already been pushed far away by his peers. Augustus couldn't help but laugh at this scene. Only then did he remember that Angela was only an 18-year-old girl. When she was on the set, her maturity and hard work often made people forget her age. He didn't expect her to be so mischievous. Augustus's gentle smile was faithfully captured by the camera. The subsequent impact of this press conference was huge. Angela's name and the face that the media called Beauty of the Century once again swept across the headlines with an unstoppable attack. There was another piece of news that came along with this. The movie King Augustus and the popular newcomer Angela are suspected to be real. Augustus is affectionate, and Joshua and Princess Utana are connected in real life. Along with this headline, Angela was answering the reporter's question with a smile on her face. Augustus was looking at her from the side, and he didn't even try to hide the love and affection in his eyes. Chapter 607. Thomas called her immediately. "Angela, you and Augustus?" Gu Shengyin replied calmly, "It's a rumor." Thomas was relieved. Angela had just stepped into the industry, and it wasn't a good thing to be involved in scandals so early. Unlike some newbies who needed to rely on scandals to increase their popularity, Angela had Kenner's support, and she didn't need to use such methods to lower her status. However, less than a minute later, Thomas heard a voice on the phone, "I have a lover." Thomas's heart tightened. "Who is it? How far have you two progressed?" Gu Shengyin was about to answer when she suddenly said, "Come to my place tomorrow." She hung up the phone and smiled. "Why are you here?" The man who had appeared in her room looked at Gu Shengyin gently and said, "I saw the news." Gu Shengyin blinked and said, "So?" The man opened his arms, and Gu Shengyin snuggled into his embrace. "I'll hold a press conference tomorrow and announce that you're my fiancé." He wouldn't allow any man to covet her, not even scandals. Gu Shengyin smiled and said, "Okay." The next day, Thomas saw a man sitting on the sofa when he arrived at Gu Shengyin's apartment. He felt that this person looked familiar. The man introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Gerald Byron. Angela's fiancé." Byron. Something flashed through Thomas's mind. He looked at the unbelievably young man in front of him in shock and matched him with an image in his mind. Thomas felt that he couldn't breathe properly. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Byron," he said dryly. "Thank you for taking care of Angela during this time. I'll talk to Mr. Matt." The Mr. Matt he was talking about was the president of Kenner Pictures. Thomas looked at Byron in front of him and then at Angela, who was standing at the side. He suddenly understood everything. It was no wonder that Kenna had spent so much effort to groom such a newcomer. The owner behind Kenna was a subsidiary of the Byron Group. This was the future boss's lady boss. Who would dare to not treat her well? A smile quickly appeared on his face. Mr. Byron, you are too kind. Of course, we, Kenna, will do our best to support a talented actress like Ms. Angela. This time, I'm here to hold a press conference to officially announce my relationship with Angela. Tell Kenna to get ready. Gerald Byron threw a bombshell casually. Thomas was a little dizzy from the shock. He asked cautiously, then, Miss Angela, are you planning to pursue a long-term career in the film and television industry, or just for fun? He didn't ask. Gerald looked at Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin thought for a bit. Based on the current speed, this body's injuries would be healed in about 2 years. If it's just because you want to heal your body, I can do it for you. Yin, do you like it or not? His voice directly entered her mind. Was he just asking about her preferences? Gu Xingyin didn't want to stay in the entertainment industry if it wasn't for the mission. Chapter 608. Thomas left in a daze. At this moment, his feelings could not be described as not complicated. It was not easy to find a newcomer. Angela had the looks, acting skills, and background. She could definitely become a legend. Unfortunately, she did not want to be in this circle. More importantly, he could not persuade her with the attitude of a manager. When he thought about Angela's identity, and how he had a supportive relationship with her for a period of time, Thomas felt relieved after confirming that he had done his best to help Angela and had never neglected her because she was a newbie. If he could maintain a good relationship with her, even Kenna's people would have to be polite to him in the future. After Thomas left, Gu Xingyin looked at the man called Gerald in confusion. System, what is his identity? Gu Xingyin asked. The system's body lit up in white light. It was helpless. The host had asked it this question several times. Unfortunately, Gu Xingyin, who had all the memories related to that man sealed, did not realize it at all. Host, you can ask directly. If he is willing to tell you, he will tell you. Don't ask me, Yin. The man in front of her looked at her. His mouth did not move, but his voice was transmitted into her mind. This world is my selfishness. I can't wait until you are strong enough to be with me. The man looked at her quietly. Gu Xingyin saw the determination in his eyes. She gave up on her question and asked, Do you know my real identity? The man knew that she was trying to understand him in a roundabout way. He did not care about her little thoughts and nodded, I know everything about you. Including this little thing. He looked at the system, who was preparing to play dead. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up, but the man covered her mouth. Don't ask any more. Treat this world as a vacation. Forget about the so-called mission and relax. Aren't you afraid of violating your character setting? No. Don't care about anything? The man nodded. What if I want to destroy this world? Gu Xingyin turned her eyes and asked. The man frowned slightly, as if he was seriously considering this question. If you like. Before he could finish, Gu Xingyin had already rushed over and hugged him. I'm so happy. For the first time, the man smiled in front of Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin never knew that a person could smile so beautifully. The media referred to the smile of Princess Utana, played by Angela, as the smile of God, but Gu Xingyin felt that the smile of the person in front of her was the real smile of God. As long as you're happy. The next day, Angela, who had become famous all over the world because of her role in the Holy Ring, held a press conference. I will retire from the entertainment industry. Angela, who was speaking, had a calm expression on her face. She did not look like the sweet and obedient girl that the media had seen. There was an uproar as countless reporters scrambled to throw out their questions. There's no reason. I don't want to. After Gu Xingyin said this, he left everyone dumbfounded. This, should be the most willful declaration of retirement in history, right? Everyone thought in a daze. There was no lot of true feelings, no necessary reason, just a simple, I don't want to stay. She did not miss her current popularity and status. Whether it was the media or the fans, they were all waiting for Kenna's reaction. In their opinion, Kenna would never tolerate his artists doing such a thing. Chapter 609. However, they were disappointed. Kenna didn't make any statement or condemn them. It was as if they didn't see the willful press conference. As Angela's manager, Thomas acted as if he didn't know about this. However, the media didn't wait for a statement from Kenna Pictures, but a press conference from the Byron Group. The leader of the Byron Group, who had always lived in people's imagination, appeared in front of the public with Angela, who was as beautiful as an angel. What was going on? Some sharp-eyed people had already seen the same diamond rings on their fingers. The handsome man looked indifferent, as if he was an emperor looking down on everyone. And Angela, who was standing next to him, seemed to be a different person in everyone's eyes. In everyone's eyes, Angela was a girl with an innocent temperament. However, although her expression wasn't as cold as the man next to her, it had always been indifferent, as if the enthusiastic reporters and flashes didn't exist. To use an analogy, she was a sweet and innocent little princess before, but now she was a cold queen with a strong aura. Could it be that this was Angela's true face? Gerald didn't say much. He simply announced the marriage of the two. Both of them didn't want to communicate with the reporters, so they left their representatives to answer the media's questions. However, the media said that they still had a lot of questions waiting for the two to answer. The two representatives were obviously experienced, and they spoke in an official tone. There was no way to pry any useful information out of them. However, the two people involved were nowhere to be found. When he saw the news, Augustus was at a private party. People in their circle often had to attend all kinds of gatherings. For example, the people who could attend this small party were first-tier big shots in the circle. He stared at his phone in a daze. Modi's walked over. She was wearing a red dress today, and her flaming red lips were radiant. Come back to your senses, Augustus. Modi sighed in her heart and called out to her old friend. With her identity, she probably acted in the movie on a whim. Looking at her now, even that Angela we saw was just an illusory shadow. Anne. I know. Augustus raised his head and interrupted her words, smiling without any haze at all. You're underestimating me, Modi's. I'm fine. Modi's looked at him and shrugged. Okay, I hope so. After Modi's left, Augustus stopped smiling. Modi's understood him, so she left. He knew that she was going to get married. She and that Angela, he knew, were two different people. He used to think that he was very close to her, but in fact, she and he were from two different worlds. He knew all this, but his heart still hurt. Augustus raised his head and drank all the wine in his cup. Angela was like a gentle breeze. She quietly appeared in the holy ring, and when the holy ring ended, she silently disappeared from everyone's sight. What she left behind for everyone was a legend of beauty that no one could surpass. Chapter 610. A week after The Holy Ring aired, the album of the same name was also put on sale. At first, only some die-hard fans of the movie bought it, and most of them just wanted to keep it as a souvenir. However, after listening to it, when I bought this album, I was a little hesitant. After all, the price was not cheap for me, but I really liked this movie. But when the music started playing, I felt that it was really worth it. I feel like my body and mind were baptized by this music. I saw the list of singers, it's actually Angela. Everyone was surprised. They didn't expect that the girl who shocked everyone in the movie had such talent. Unfortunately, no matter how many people liked her, no matter how many people called for her to come back under her handwriting, she never appeared in front of people again. She became a goddess in the hearts of countless people, and no one could surpass her. What was Gu Xingyin doing? She and Gerald went to all kinds of places that were rarely seen, such as the ice fields in the north, the deep sea in the south where no one had ever been, and the dangerous areas deep in the forest where there were pairs of fierce beasts. She didn't like places with a lot of people. Without the constraints of the mission, she didn't have to worry about being detected by the law. She could completely indulge herself and do whatever she wanted to do. Her appearance hadn't aged for 100 years, but Gerald's body was a real human. You can play here for a while. Gerald looked at her. His face was full of wrinkles, but his aura was still not to be underestimated. Gu Xingyin didn't say anything. What was the point of staying in a place where he wasn't around? The moment Gerald left this world, Gu Xingyin said softly to the system, "Leave this world." In the blink of an eye, she returned to the pure white space. At the same time, the sealed memories returned to her mind. This time, she didn't immediately go to the next world. Instead, she frowned and asked, "System, why are my memories sealed?" She remembered that he once told her that in a world, there couldn't be two outsiders like them at the same time. But why did she only forget about him? Why didn't she forget everything? Why wasn't she expelled from that world? The system transmitted something directly into her mind. Just like what he said earlier, the laws of the world were very strict with each world. Outsiders with powerful souls like them were not welcomed by the laws of the world. Unless one was so powerful that the laws of the world could not do anything about it, once one was exposed, one would be directly expelled from a certain world like before. In order to be able to accompany her in every world, that person had sealed his soul power in every life, preventing the world's laws from noticing him. But just as he said, he was selfish. He wanted to see what Ain was like in the mission world while he remembered everything. Furthermore, he had to start over in every world, while Gu Xingyin had to bear all the memories of the two of them together. He felt sorry for his lover. In the end, he reached an agreement with the laws of this world. No one knew what he had done. The laws of this world no longer interfered with the affairs of the two of them. They even tacitly agreed that Gu Xingyin, an outsider, interfered with the fate of the creatures of this world. The only condition was to seal the memories of his lover. As for why the laws did this, it may only be known when Gu Xingyin became strong to a certain extent one day. Chapter 611. System, this won't be the same as last time, right? Before entering the next world, Gu Xingyin asked the system. Don't worry, host. Having received the assurance, Gu Xingyin closed his eyes in relief and waited for the teleportation. This world was a female-dominated world where imperial power reigned supreme. Gu Xingyin's body was the eldest daughter of the Phoenix Emperor of the Heavenly Phoenix Dynasty, Feng Chang'e. It was said that the moment she was born, there was a natural phenomenon. Colorful clouds filled the sky and hundreds of birds gathered in the palace, singing loudly. The Phoenix Emperor was overjoyed and named her Chang'e as the crown prince. Ever since she was born, Feng Chang'e had been doted on by everyone. She didn't let down the expectations of the Phoenix Emperor and the Heavenly Monarch Dynasty's people. She was born with intelligence at an early age. She had an eidetic memory and an exceptional talent in martial arts. Even the Phoenix Emperor had always taught her as the crown prince. However, as her brothers and sisters were born one by one, the younger sisters who idolized their elder sister also had their own thoughts. Because of their different statuses and the fact that she was taught by the Phoenix Emperor alone, Feng Chang'e was not very close to her siblings, except for her own sister, Feng Mingge, who was also one of the 8 daughters of the Phoenix Emperor. Feng Mingge was 4 years younger than Feng Chang'e and loved to stick to her elder sister since she was young. Feng Chang'e loved this spoiled and spoiled sister very much. When Feng Chang'e was 14 years old, she was betrothed to Shi Qingyi, the eldest son of the Marquis of Wenyuan Shi family. Feng Chang'e did not have any romantic feelings for this cousin who was 1 year younger than her. She was just following her mother's wishes to choose a crown prince who was beneficial to her. She had always been a perfect crown prince. She thought that she would slowly come into contact with the imperial court and become the new emperor of the Heavenly Phoenix Dynasty when her mother grew old. Something unexpected happened very quickly. When she and Shi Qingyi were dressed casually at the Lantern Festival, someone leaked the crown prince's whereabouts and they were met with a well-planned assassination. When the assassin's blade was about to touch Feng Chang'e's body, Shi Qingyi, who had been standing beside her, pushed her away and took the fatal blow himself. It was at that moment that Huang Chang'e placed this cousin and future emperor in his heart. She thought that she could not let down a person who was willing to die for her at a critical moment. Fortunately, Shi Qingyi was rescued. Huang Chang'e began to treat Shi Qingyi well. He told Shi Qingyi his secrets and even sent out the secret forces of the crown prince to ensure his safety. Huang Chang'e felt that if she succeeded the throne in the future, she must not be like her father. She did not want Shi Qingyi to be as unhappy as her father. However, before any of this could be realized, the imperial edict from the royal concubine arrived at the crown prince's palace. Huang Chang'e looked at the contents of the imperial edict in disbelief. She looked at the pile of secret letters found in the secret compartment of her study. There were even stolen goods where she cursed the Phoenix Emperor to die early. Finally, it was Shi Qingyi, who was standing behind the messenger. Huang Chang'e was imprisoned by the furious Phoenix sovereign. She had never understood why Shi Qingyi would betray her and frame her. Until Huang Mingge's arrival. The little girl who liked to tug on her sister's sleeve and act spoiled had grown into a beautiful and noble young lady. Sister, are you confused as to why cousin Qingyi would do that? Chapter 6:12. Huang Chang'e looked at her in shock and disappointment. Ever since she was imprisoned, she had been thinking about why Shi Qingyi would betray her. But no matter how she thought about it, she had never linked it to Huang Mingge. In Huang Chang'e's heart, her younger sister had always been a delicate flower that needed to be protected. Look, it's that look again. Huang Mingge looked at her with resentment and unwillingness. You're always looking down on your siblings and me, thinking that we should enjoy your kindness because you're the emperor's eldest daughter, the crown prince. But why? I am also the empress' eldest daughter, you were just born a few years earlier than me. Huang Mingge realized that she had lost control of her emotions. She reached out to tidy up her hair and said softly, Cousin Qingyi is the same. Cousin Qingyi is so outstanding, but you only used him as a tool to strengthen your position through marriage. I like him so much. Tell me, how can I be willing to accept this? Huang Chang'e said softly, so you worked together with him to put on such a show during the Lantern Festival? She was not stupid. In fact, she was very smart. But Huang Chang'e had trusted Shi Qingyi and her younger sister too much in the past. She never thought that one day, she would be stabbed by the person she trusted the most. Huang Chang'e closed her eyes. She did not want to say anything more. That man, he did not see how devoted she had been to him for such a long time. This younger sister, she had always been obedient to her since they were young. She thought that it was charity. For some people, even if you cut out your heart for them, they would still despise you. Huang Mingge looked at Huang Chang'e with resentment. She was like this. Even if she was imprisoned, even if the empress despised her, she was still so arrogant. Even if Huang Mingge did not want to admit it, Huang Chang'e was born with a different temperament from ordinary people. In addition, she had been raised as a noble in the world for more than 10 years. None of her siblings, including herself, could compare to her. This was one of the reasons why she hated her. With such an outstanding successor in front of her, the empress did not have any other children in her eyes. She gave all her hopes and motherly love to her eldest daughter. Huang Chang'e suddenly opened his eyes. I would like to ask, does father know about this? Huang Mingge sneered, at this time, father has been kneeling in Mother Empress' palace, pleading for you. Huang Chang'e was relieved. No matter what, not everyone in this world had abandoned her. Huang Mingge took out a dagger from her sleeve. Huang Chang'e, don't worry. Don't come out for the rest of your life. Father, I will take good care of it for you. I will also govern this empire well for you. She smiled and stabbed the dagger into her stomach without hesitation. Huang Chang'e, who was imprisoned in the Crown Prince Palace, suddenly went crazy and stabbed his sister, the Eighth Highness, who had gone to visit him out of worry. Now, the Eighth Highness was still unconscious. The Phoenix Emperor was furious, and from then on, he completely gave up on this eldest daughter of his. She issued an imperial edict, stripping Huang Chang'e of her position as the crown prince. She left her to fend for herself in the cold palace, and no one was allowed to visit her. A former crown prince who was despised by the phoenix and could not make a comeback, it was easy to imagine what kind of treatment he would receive. In less than 2 years, Huang Chang'e died of illness in the palace. Chapter 613. Gu Xingyin snapped out of her daze and realized that she was lying on a soft couch. She sat up and casually glanced at her surroundings. This was a palace. The decorations in the palace were all rare treasures. It was extravagant and luxurious. This was Gu Xingyin's evaluation. Crown Princess Feng Chang'e's palace. Looking at the side palace, it was clear that the Phoenix Emperor's love for her eldest daughter was not in vain. Shi Qingyi had reported her and the Phoenix Emperor had locked her up in the palace in a fit of anger. The Phoenix Emperor still had high hopes for her daughter. She had always treated her as her successor. This empire would be hers sooner or later. She did not believe that her eldest daughter would do such a stupid thing. Even though Gu Xingyin was locked up, no one dared to shortchange her of the crown princess's allowance. Feng Chang'e stood up. She wasn't wearing shoes. The floor was covered with a thick layer of lamb wool that was offered by the Western shepherd. It was very soft and comfortable. Calculating the time, it was about time for Huang Minge to show off in front of her. System. Draw the ability of a random world, Gu Xingyin said. The system's white light flashed. Okay, host. The dark energy of the blood kindred? Gu Xingyin was not very happy, because, can I use the dark magic of the blood kindred? She asked cautiously. No, host. It is beyond the range of this world's martial arts. Gu Xingyin, I am already familiar with the system's tricks. I know that things are not that simple. The system continued, host can still use some of the blood kindred special abilities, such as rapid healing of wounds. You can also use the blood kindred queen seduction. However, the effect will be limited and will not be as powerful. In short, it had to be within the range of a human. Better than nothing. Gu Xingyin nodded. Huang Minge was coming. She had to think about how to deal with this good sister. 3 days later, Huang Minge came as expected. Walking in the clear Phoenix Palace, which symbolized the status of the crown princess, Huang Minge could not help but feel indignant. There was clear evidence of Huang Chang'e's intentions towards the empress, but the empress only locked her up. She even allowed her to live in the clear Phoenix Palace, which symbolized her status and identity. Mother Empress, you are really too biased. She lowered her eyes, hiding her disbelief, and walked into the palace. She pushed the door open and saw Huang Chang'e sitting in front of a desk fiddling with a vase of flowers. She could not suppress the anger in her heart. Because he was imprisoned in the palace, Huang Chang'e was dressed very casually. He didn't wear the fiery red phoenix robe that symbolized his status as the crown prince. Instead, he wore a simple white robe. She didn't have any complicated and luxurious accessories on her body. Even her long hair was simply tied up with a silver white ribbon. Huang Chang'e had never had Chang'e looked Huang Minge. In her impression, this elder sister of hers was always dressed in a robe that symbolized the status of the crown prince, luxurious and majestic beyond compare. She always felt that no matter who it was, they would be able to display the noble bearing of a royal family. Huang Chang'e's unparalleled aura, which was praised by others, was only displayed by the most noble of clothes. But Huang Chang'e used reality to tell her that some people did not need clothes. Chapter 614. Even though she was dressed in plain clothes and black hair, it could not hide the noble and dignified aura that Huang Chang'e exuded. She was currently placing her hands on a few flower branches in the vase. Her slender and fair fingers were resting on the bright red flowers. There was a kind of soul-stirring beauty to it. Huang Minge lowered her head and looked at herself. Today, when she came to see Huang Chang'e, she had specially dressed up. She wanted to use her own success to stimulate Huang Chang'e. But now, she was the one who was stimulated. Minge? Huang Chang'e looked up and saw her. She seemed very happy. Are you here to see me? Huang Chang'e had perfectly inherited her mother's magnificent and dignified beauty. In terms of appearance, she was the most outstanding among her siblings. When she smiled, Huang Minga felt that the entire hall seemed to light up. This made Huang Minga even more depressed. Why? Was Huang Chang'e so lucky? She sneered, "That's right, my sister. I am here to see you." Huang Chang'e stopped smiling. She could tell that this sister of hers did not come with good intentions. She was a little disappointed and said lightly, "Minga, are you here to laugh at me?" Huang Minga sneered, "Huang Chang'e, do you think that you still have a chance to turn things around?" Huang Chang'e looked at her in disbelief. It was as if this was the first time she had met this sister that she had loved since she was young. This girl who looked at her coldly and looked at her with disgust was actually Minga. Or was this her true self? Huang Chang'e felt that her life all these years was a joke. Her cousin, who had always treated her well, had betrayed her. Her sister, who had always doted on her, was just a hypocrite. She put away her thoughts and said lightly, "What do you want to do?" Huang Minga smiled and said, "Of course, I am here to tell you something. I can't let my good sister not know how she became like this, right?" She started to tell her when she had reached an agreement with Shi Qingyi. She also told her how she had placed the so-called evidence in her secret places. One by one, one by one. Even though Gu Xingyin already knew the truth, but when she heard Huang Minga's boastful tone, she still felt an indescribable anger. She listened to every word without missing a single word, and her expression remained calm. "So, what do you want to do today?" "Minga." Huang Minga looked at her strangely. "Don't you feel angry? Don't you feel hatred? Aren't you disappointed?" Huang Chang'e glanced at her indifferently and did not answer her. Huang Minga stood up and walked quickly to Huang Chang'e. Yes, that was it. Even though she was now suspected by the Queen Mother and imprisoned, she still looked at him with that arrogant look on her face. She remembered her purpose for coming here today, and her gaze became extremely fierce. "Huang Chang'e, aren't you relying on the fact that the Empress dotes on you? Today, I will not let you have the chance to make a comeback." At this moment, Huang Chang'e suddenly raised his head. She looked at Huang Minga without blinking and said softly, "You hate me." Huang Minga suddenly paused. She felt that there was a strange charm in Huang Chang'e's voice. She laughed coldly and said, "Yes, I hate you." Huang Chang'e continued, "You can't wait to kill me with a knife." Huang Minga revealed a strange smile, "Yes, I can't wait to kill you with a knife." Without hesitation, she took out the knife that she had hidden in her sleeve and stabbed it towards Gu Xingyin. Chapter 6:15. Gu Xingyin slowly fell to the ground as she felt the cold blade piercing her body. However, Huang Minga let go of her hand as if she was scalded. She looked at the blood on her wound in a daze. She had wanted to put on a show, but why couldn't she control herself? All she wanted to do was to make Huang Chang'e disappear. She lowered her head and looked at the unconscious Huang Chang'e. Her heart was in a mess. What should she do? It was no secret that she had entered Clear Phoenix Palace. Now that Huang Chang'e had become like this, everyone would suspect her. There must be a way. Yes, there must be a way. She even looked coldly at the unconscious Huang Chang'e on the ground. This was a great opportunity. If Huang Chang'e didn't wake up, "Your Highness, the immortal dew flower tea you ordered." The door opened and Huang Chang'e's head made by Xian walked in with something. She was stunned by the situation in the hall. The tray in her hand fell to the ground and the crisp sound of porcelain cups falling to the ground could be heard. "Your Highness." Someone. Huang Minga panicked and knew that the best time had passed. There were a lot of messy footsteps around him. There were also people talking. He could vaguely hear a dignified female voice questioning something. So noisy. Gu Xingyin was a little depressed. She wanted to open her eyes but the weakness in her body made her unable to move. Darkness came and she fell into a deep sleep once again. At the same time, the woman in luxurious clothes who had been guarding the bed looked at her eldest daughter who was still motionless. She turned her head and questioned the imperial physician, "Didn't you say that Chang'e is out of danger? Why hasn't she woken up?" The imperial physician who was called was a thin middle-aged woman. She replied, "Your Majesty, His Highness the Crown Prince is indeed fine. As for why he hasn't woken up, it might be because he lost too much blood." Her back was also drenched in cold sweat. That stab had hit her vitals. At that time, all the imperial physicians in the imperial hospital had been called over by the furious Her Majesty the Phoenix Emperor. "If my Chang'e doesn't wake up, all of you can go and accompany her." Fortunately, His Highness the Crown Prince was blessed by the heavens. Even with such a fatal injury, he miraculously escaped from danger. However, he still hadn't woken up. The imperial physician was also secretly complaining. If His Highness still didn't wake up, she was afraid that she would be torn to pieces by the furious Phoenix Emperor. When the Phoenix Emperor heard the imperial physician mention that he had lost too much blood, a cold glint flashed through his long and narrow eyes. Outside the Sky Phoenix Palace's hall, the eighth prince, Huang Minga, was kneeling. She glanced at her pale and bloodless eldest daughter lying on the bed. She coldly ordered the palace servants and imperial physicians to take good care of her, then she got up and went to the outer room. Huang Minga had already been kneeling outside the palace for 2 days and 2 nights. Every day, countless palace servants and ministers would pass by the heavenly Phoenix Palace. Huang Minga knew that these people might be secretly discussing about her. She felt incomparably ashamed, but she did not dare to get up. That day, the Phoenix Emperor, who had received the news, hurried over. She wanted to go over and defend herself, but the Phoenix was furious and directly slapped her face. "You useless thing, go kneel outside the palace and reflect on your actions." Her face was burning as she watched Huang Chang'e being carried by her own mother and escorted by everyone to Her Majesty's Sky Phoenix Palace. "I will remember today's humiliation." Chapter 6:16. Eighth Princess, Her Majesty summons you to enter. A palace servant walked to her side. Huang Minga heaved a sigh of relief. It was a good thing that she was allowed to stand up. She stood up shakily, and she even fell down again because her legs were too weak. The palace servant beside her stood quietly with his hands by his side. If it was any other time, someone would have already rushed over to help her up. A bunch of people who stepped on the weak. She forced herself to stand up and even smiled at the palace servant. "Sorry for the trouble." After speaking, she slowly walked towards Heavenly Phoenix Palace. The Phoenix Emperor was sitting on the main seat in the side hall, holding a cup of freshly brewed tea in her hand. Huang Minga walked very slowly. Because she had not drunk a drop of water for 2 days, her complexion looked very bad. Her usually rosy lips were even dry and cracked. When had the eighth princess, who had always been doted on, suffered like this? Huang Minga's weak and powerless appearance did not arouse the Phoenix Emperor's pity. Her Chang'e was still lying unconscious on the bed. Huang Minga saw that her mother did not even look at her with pity. She hated it in her heart and obediently knelt down. She had always been like this. Other than Huang Chang'e, no one else could obtain her true love. To her other children, she had always been a high and mighty monarch. She was even stingy with a smile. Only in front of the eldest princess, Huang Chang'e, would she be an ordinary mother. Since Huang Minga was born, she knew that her biological sister, who was the crown prince, was different from her. She did not live with her. She lived in the most honorable heavenly Phoenix Palace since she was young and was personally taught by her mother who did not smile. It was only until she was 14 years old that she moved into the clear Phoenix Palace, which symbolized the identity of the crown prince. "Mother Empress, I know my mistake." Huang Minga came back to her senses and admitted her mistake. The Phoenix Emperor's hand paused and she placed the teacup on the table. The teacup and the table made a crisp sound. "Tell me, what crimes have you committed?" Her cold voice came down from the top. Huang Minga had already thought of a set of excuses in these 2 days. "That day, I was prepared to reason with my sister. Imperial Mother, you dote on her so much, yet she actually did such a thing. This son is angry and wants to question her. Instead, he started arguing with big sister behind us." As she spoke, tears fell from her eyes. Mother Empress, I was wrong. I was just angry that elder sister let you down. I don't know why, the Phoenix Emperor looked down at his daughter. Because they were twin sisters, his 8 daughters looked very similar to Chang'e. But Chang'e never had such an expression. Even when she was found out to have framed her, she still kept her back straight. She was always the most proud and satisfied crown princess. So you only wanted to seek justice for me, but in the end, you ended up using a knife on your own sister? The Phoenix Emperor's voice was very calm. Huang Minga couldn't tell if she believed her words. I watched Chang'e grow up. No one knows her skills better than I do. If I didn't have absolute trust in my only biological sister, how could I let her succeed? Mother Empress, I usually use this knife for self-defense. I only wanted to use it to scare elder sister. I didn't really want to use it. Huang Minga knew that she couldn't avoid bringing a weapon into the Clear Phoenix Palace. She could only hope that after all these years, the Empress still had some mother-daughter feelings for her and chose to believe her. Chapter 617. The Phoenix Emperor didn't say anything. Huang Minga knelt down anxiously. She knew the methods of her Empress mother. Other than her elder sister, who could still enjoy a trace of warmth from her, no one else would be able to get much affection from her. At this time, the Phoenix Emperor's personal maid came in happily. Your Majesty, His Highness the Crown Prince is awake. Joy flashed across the Phoenix Emperor's face. Chang'e is awake. She stood up and looked at Huang Minga kneeling on the ground. I'll go see Chang'e. As for you, let's see what Chang'e wants. A gust of cold wind blew past Huang Minga's face. It seemed to chill her to the bone. Chang'e meant, she thought that Huang Chang'e would never be able to make a comeback in this life, so she told her the truth. How could she let her go? Huang Minga went limp. Gu Xingyin felt pain all over her body. In order not to arouse the Phoenix Emperor's suspicion, she didn't let the system block the pain. Chang'e. The familiar scent of phoenix tail entered Gu Xingyin's nose. She knew that the Phoenix Emperor was here. The Phoenix Emperor had never seen his daughter in such a weak and powerless state. Her face was pale, and there wasn't a trace of blood on her lips. Gu Xingyin suddenly stretched out an arm and hugged the Phoenix Emperor's waist. Mother Empress, I'm in pain, don't move. The Phoenix Emperor's body stiffened. Was Chang'e acting coquettishly to her? This feeling was very novel to her. Her motherly love and tenderness were almost all given to her eldest daughter. However, Chang'e had worshipped her mother since she was a child. She couldn't wait to learn from her mother's every word and action. As a result, she had an unapproachable appearance at a young age. Although this was more in line with the temperament of an imperial heir, it lacked some innocence. The Phoenix Emperor's voice unconsciously softened. I'll ask the imperial physician to boil some painkillers for you. Don't move, be careful not to hurt your wound. Gu Xingyin nodded obediently. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and looked at her. Mother Empress, I have a lot to say to you. She looked pale and weak at this moment, and her eyes were full of dependence and admiration. The Phoenix Emperor didn't want to reject her at all. She sent everyone out, giving the mother and daughter some space to talk in private. Gu Xingyin wanted to sit up, but the Phoenix Emperor reached out to stop her. I already told you not to move. She bent over and pulled out a few pillows from the other side. She placed them behind Gu Xingyin's back so that she could lift her body up slightly. In the entire heavenly Phoenix country, there was only one person who could enjoy the personal service of the Phoenix monarch. Gu Xingyin sighed in his heart. The Phoenix Emperor truly loved his daughter, Huang Chang'e. If it wasn't for the fact that Huang Chang'e's personality was too cold and arrogant in the original plot, she wouldn't have been able to accept the fact that her mother didn't trust her and didn't try to explain herself. This pair of mother and daughter with similar personalities wouldn't have ended up in that situation. Gu Xingyin stared at the Phoenix Queen and suddenly said, Mother, I didn't do those things. She didn't say what those things were, but the two of them knew what she was referring to. The gentleness on the Phoenix Emperor's face disappeared. She looked at her daughter carefully. She didn't know why she chose to talk about this matter at this time. In the end, she was the Empress's woman. She would never look at things so simply. Gu Xingyin thought in her heart. She didn't seem to notice the Phoenix Emperor's expression and slowly said, I didn't want to explain myself at first. I thought that Mother Empress would understand me. But now, I understand. Chapter 618. She smiled faintly and didn't look at the Phoenix Monarch's expression. She continued, when I was stabbed by Minga, I really thought that I would never wake up. At that time, I thought that if I were to die now, I would definitely be unwilling to accept it. I have yet to prove my innocence. If I were to die, in your eyes, would be a greedy and disrespectful daughter. How wronged would that be? She raised her eyes and looked at the Phoenix Monarch. Regardless of whether you think that I am putting on an act or revealing my true feelings, I still have to say it. Your son, Feng Chang'e, has always been loyal to you. I have never had any disloyal, disrespectful, disobedient, or unfilial thoughts. The Phoenix Monarch didn't speak for a long time. She stared into Gu Xingyin's eyes, as if she wanted to see if she was speaking the truth from her eyes. Gu Xingyin allowed her to look at her with a magnanimous expression. After a long while, the Phoenix Monarch finally sighed. She bent down and pulled up Gu Xingyin's blanket a little. If your body isn't well, don't think so much. It hurts your mind. Gu Xingyin's eyes immediately lit up. She looked at the Phoenix Monarch with an extremely affectionate gaze. Your daughter's mind isn't hurt. Your daughter is happy. She paused for a moment and continued, when your daughter's injuries recover, I will definitely personally find all the evidence to prove my innocence. She knew that the Phoenix Monarch didn't believe her and had already ordered people to investigate countless times. However, the results all pointed to clear Phoenix Palace. Thus, she could only be placed under house arrest. However, Gu Xingyin, who had God's sight, could easily find a breakthrough. As long as there was a breakthrough, the Phoenix Monarch's secret guards would be able to uncover the truth and accurately find the mastermind. The Phoenix Monarch didn't continue on this topic. Instead, she changed the topic. Chang'e, what do you plan to do? She clearly saw that when she asked this question, Chang'e's eyes, which had just brightened up, dimmed again. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes, as if hiding the pain in them. She didn't say much. She only said softly, Mother, I don't want to see her again. She didn't mention what Huang Minga had done to her, nor did she mention the conversation she had with Huang Minga. Because there were only the two of them at that time, there was no evidence for whatever she said. As long as Huang Minga denied it, Gu Xingyin had no way to prove the truth. She might as well directly express her dislike for Huang Minga. With the Phoenix King's thoughts, of course, he would want to know what had happened to make Xing, who had always loved his sister as much as his life, unwilling to even look at her. As expected, the Phoenix Emperor didn't ask any more questions. She said, attempting to murder the Crown Prince is a serious crime. Chang'e, I leave the choice to you. Gu Xingyin was silent for a long time. Mother Empress, Minga is still young. Send someone to teach her well. The Phoenix Emperor snorted. You're too weak. Gu Xingyin smiled bitterly. But she's Minga. For the past 14 years, I've treated her just like how you treat me, Mother Empress. He couldn't bear to be ruthless. All right, you should have a good rest. The Phoenix Monarch left. Gu Xingyin quietly closed her eyes and lay on the bed. The Phoenix Monarch said that the decision she made was too weak. However, she was more at ease with such a loyal person. If she really took Huang Minga's life ruthlessly, the Phoenix Monarch would probably think that she was too cold-blooded. She was the Phoenix Monarch of this dynasty before she was her mother. Chapter 619. The Phoenix Emperor walked out of the side hall. Huang Minga was still standing there. She didn't dare to leave. She was waiting for a result. She didn't know what the result would be. To be on the safe side, she even secretly sent someone to the inviting Phoenix Palace to invite her father over. If the Empress was too angry, her father should be able to console her, right? The Phoenix Emperor looked at her eighth daughter who was standing respectfully. For the first time, she felt that she had never seen through her. Among all her children, other than Chang'e, Minga was the one she doted on the most. She was born in a noble family and knew how to act spoiled. She looked sweet and pleasant. Whenever she got something good, she would remember to leave a portion for her daughter. She always thought that Huang Minga was still the innocent little girl in her memory. But no little girl would send a knife into her own sister's body. Moreover, what did she say to Chang'e that day? What made Chang'e reveal such a pained and hateful expression when she heard her name? She didn't speak for a long time. This made Huang Minga even more nervous. No matter how mature and shrewd she was only a 14-year-old girl. She felt that Huang Chang'e must have said something bad about her to the empress. If it were him who encountered such a situation, he would probably cut the other party into 1,000 pieces before he would be satisfied. She said nervously to the Phoenix Emperor, "Empress Mother, I know that sister must be very angry with me now. It's reasonable for her to want to kill me. But right now, she's just angry." She suddenly couldn't continue speaking because she was looking at the Phoenix Emperor's half-smiling face. Looking carefully, there was a trace of mockery and pity. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that she had guessed wrongly? The Phoenix Emperor pitied her eldest daughter Chang'e. She couldn't bear to hurt Huang Minga even though she had been hurt. But this girl in front of her didn't understand her sister's good intentions at all. She didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, she was trying to absolve herself. She said slowly, "Chang'e said that you're still young. She's afraid that you've been deceived by evil people. She said that you should find a teacher to teach you." Huang Minga felt a boom in her head. She thought to herself, "I'm done for." Perhaps the Empress Mother would not blame him for his sister's sake, but her impression of him in her heart had dropped to the lowest point. What would the Empress think of a daughter who didn't feel the slightest bit of remorse for stabbing her elder sister and even tried to exonerate herself? Huang Minga felt that it must be Huang Chang'e. She must know what she would do, so she pretended to be magnanimous and said those words. She had fallen into her trap without knowing the reason and was despised by the Empress. She had never thought about what she should do if she really felt guilty. The Phoenix Monarch did not misjudge her at all. She was such a selfish person. "His Royal Highness is here." Following the palace servant's voice, the Lord of the Phoenix in a luxurious robe walked in. The imperial concubine was a man as elegant as bamboo. He seemed to be in a hurry. When he saw the imperial concubine, he did not even have the time to bow and hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, are you going to blame Minga?" When the Phoenix Emperor heard this, he turned his head to look at the pale Feng Minga and smiled faintly. "Your Highness, you worry too much. I just went to see Chang'e. She is very protective of Minga." The imperial concubine was relieved when he heard this. Only then did he realize that he had overstepped his boundaries. He was about to apologize when he heard the Phoenix Emperor's words. "Minga is not young anymore. I plan to find a day to open a residence for her and find a good teacher to teach her well." Huang Minga looked at the Phoenix Emperor in disbelief. Was he giving up on her? Chapter 620. The princes and princesses of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty all lived in the palace unless they got married. Some of the favored princesses could even continue to live in the palace after they got married. She was only 14 years old and was let out of the palace in advance. It was tantamount to the Phoenix Queen telling the world that she didn't like her daughter. What kind of future would he have in the future if he was like this? She looked to the Phoenix Lord for help. The Phoenix Lord couldn't bear to let her go. His eldest daughter had been taught by the Phoenix Queen since she was young and moved to Clear Phoenix Palace after she turned 14. Although they were close, she wasn't as caring as his youngest daughter. He couldn't accept the Phoenix Queen's order. But before he could say anything, the Phoenix Queen said, "Have you ever thought that you have another daughter who is lying in my Heavenly Phoenix Palace and almost didn't wake up?" The Phoenix Lord didn't say anything. Both were his own flesh and blood. Moreover, his youngest daughter had gone too far this time. The Phoenix Lord glanced at his youngest daughter and his eyes dimmed. "Your Majesty, I heard that Chang'e has woken up. I want to see her." The Phoenix Queen naturally allowed it. The Phoenix Lord's usually high-spirited eldest daughter was now lying in bed pale and weak. He wanted to ask her to plead for his youngest daughter, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. He could only comfort Gu Xingyin and tell her to take good care of herself. Then, he took Huang Minga back to inviting Phoenix Palace. No one knew what the Phoenix Lord and the 8th Prince talked about in inviting Phoenix Palace. They only knew that the usually gentle His Royal Highness lost his temper that day and even smashed his cup. In short, neither the Phoenix Queen nor the Phoenix Lord saw the 8th Prince off on the day he left the palace. Gu Xingyin smiled. How could a person who could become the Phoenix Lord and remain in favor for so many years be easy to deal with? Huang Minga's little tricks were nothing in front of the Phoenix Lord. And as the Phoenix Lord, he knew which of his 2 daughters was the guarantee of his honor in the future. He would never allow anyone to try to destroy or shake Huang Chang's position. Even if it was his youngest daughter. Huang Minga's life had been going too smoothly. Hence, she was a little smart and felt that she was unparalleled in the world. Gu Xingyin was going to wait and see. She was going to wait until she lost everything she relied on, bit by bit. When that happened, what else would she use to fight against her? Gu Xingyin was finally allowed to move after recuperating for half a month. After recuperating for another half a month, the imperial physician said that there were no major problems with her daily activities. She just needed to be more careful. The first thing she did was to ask the Phoenix to move out of Heavenly Phoenix Palace. "We'll talk about it after you've recovered," the Phoenix Emperor said without even raising her head. Gu Xingyin tugged on the Phoenix Emperor's sleeve, not allowing her to continue writing. The Phoenix Emperor raised his head helplessly. Ever since his eldest daughter was injured, she had become more and more clingy and coquettish. Although it was a good feeling, what about the dignity of the Crown Prince? The Phoenix Emperor said in a sweet voice. Forget it. Chang'e was still the noble Crown Prince in front of the other officials. If she was only like this in front of the Phoenix Emperor, it wouldn't be a big problem. Her Majesty the Phoenix Emperor made such a decision. Children who knew how to act coquettishly and throw tantrums would get candy. This was what Gu Xingyin had learned after completing so many tasks. It turned out that it was really useful. Chapter 621. I've been staying in Heavenly Phoenix Palace for more than half a month. I don't know what the officials outside are saying. Now that I've recovered, please let me move back. The Phoenix Emperor looked at her daughter. Other than her, there was no one else who could make her worry so much. Okay. But I'll let Huan Exine keep an eye on you. You have to stay in the palace during this period of time and think about other things after you've recovered. Okay. Gu Xingyin moved back to Clear Phoenix Palace the next day. Following that, the Phoenix Emperor released her from confinement in Clear Phoenix Palace. Of course, to the current Gu Xingyin, this order was useless. The Phoenix Emperor really placed Huan Exine, the head steward of the inner court, by Gu Xingyin's side. Aunt Huan Exine, I promise to take medicine on time and take good care of my body. You'd better return to Mother Empress's side. You've served her for so many years. She won't be used to your absence, Gu Xingyin said. Huan Exine smiled. Before this servant came, Her Majesty said that this servant must take care of your Highness Crown Prince's recovery. Don't worry, Qing Exine is with Her Majesty. Huan Exine and Qing Exine were the most capable aunts by the Phoenix Emperor's side. Gu Xingyin spent another period of time being treated like porcelain. She drank several bowls of tasteless medicine every day and was watched by everyone in Clear Phoenix Palace. If there was any big movement, they would be so frightened that they would come forward to stop her, for fear that something would happen to her. Fortunately, this body's recovery ability was top-notch. After another half a month, the imperial physician finally announced that His Highness Crown Prince was fine. Gu Xingyin was finally allowed to leave the palace. The first thing she did was to investigate the whereabouts of the people around Shiqingyi. She knew Shiqingyi. This person looked like an otherworldly immortal on the surface, but in reality, he was very ruthless. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done something like slandering Huang Chang'e for having rebellious thoughts. No matter what he did, there would always be loopholes. As expected, after the incident with the crown prince had passed for so long, he probably felt that the situation wasn't so tense anymore and started to clean up the mess. Originally, there was no need for this. However, during this period of time, the crown prince, who was rumored to have been imprisoned by the Phoenix Emperor, had regained the Phoenix Emperor's favor. This made Shi Qingyi very terrified. He and the crown prince had completely fallen out. Once the crown prince regained power, he would definitely seek him out to settle the score. As long as she can't find any evidence, then I'll deny it no matter what. I'll just say that I found some clues and was worried about my emperor, so I went to report her. This way, he could show his loyalty to the Phoenix Emperor. At most, he would be hated by the crown prince. In Phoenix City, Huang Chang'e did not have the ability to control everything. Therefore, what he needed to do now was to eliminate all future troubles. The first to suffer was Chuanfu, who had grown up with Shi Qingyi since she was a child. As Shi Qingyi's confidant, he knew almost everything about her. In the case of Huang Chang'e, most of the things were done by him. Chuanfu had grown up with Shi Qingyi, so he knew very well what kind of person Shi Qingyi was. He had long expected that he would be abandoned one day, so he had already chosen a way out for himself. Before Shi Qingyi could make a move, Chuanfu had bribed the servants of Marquis Wenyuan's residence and quietly ran away with some gold, silver, and valuables. Gu Xingyin had already ordered people to keep an eye on Marquis Wenyuan's residence. When Chuanfu ran away, he fell into her trap. Chapter 622. Chuanfu. When Chuanfu saw where he was taken to, his heart was filled with grief. He knew the crown prince. Not only did he know him, but he was also very familiar with him. In fact, he always felt that the crown prince treated his master very well. When his master chose to cooperate with the eighth prince, he even advised him not to do so. Why would his master not be satisfied when he didn't want to be the future empress? Unfortunately, Shi Qingyi didn't listen to him. He was afraid that even if he died 10 times, it wouldn't be enough for what he did with Shi Qingyi. Chuanfu made up his mind and was about to kill himself. Think carefully before you do anything. Gu Xingyin looked at him and said lightly. The people in the carriage in front of the tea house at the city gate are your wife and your 2-year-old son, right? Chuanfu suddenly raised his head. He had been very secretive about this matter. How did this person find out? His eyes suddenly became confused. He only felt that the crown prince's voice was very pleasant. Tell me everything you've done honestly. I promise that if your family didn't participate in this matter, I will keep them safe. Chuanfu unconsciously took these words to heart. He was going to die anyway. If he didn't say anything, his master wouldn't let him go. If he told the truth, the crown prince might promise to keep his family safe. Gu Xingyin quietly waited for his reply. She knew that he would promise her. Sure enough. Chuanfu suddenly raised his head and looked at her. Your Highness, can you really keep your promise? Can you really keep my wife and son safe? Gu Xingyin didn't say anything. Bai Xian, who was standing beside her, said, Who do you think you are? How dare you question our Highness? Chuanfu shrank back and finally opened his mouth. One by one, it started from his young master's plan to assassinate and rescue. Later, his young master gained Huang Chang'e's trust and secretly did something in her palace. Finally, he righteously reported it. Shi Qingyi had always been hypocritical towards Huang Chang'e. After Chuanfu finished speaking, he added, This lowly one only knew that young master was working with someone else, but that person's identity was very mysterious. This lowly one didn't know her identity until a few days ago. He carefully raised his head and looked at Gu Xingyin. The person who conspired with my young master is your sister, Her Highness the 8th Princess. The crown prince didn't seem to be as angry as he had imagined. He didn't seem to have much of a reaction when he heard the news. Didn't she have the best relationship with His Highness the 8th Prince? No one would feel good about being betrayed by the person closest to them, right? Chuanfu was puzzled, but he did not dare to ask. I'll send someone to verify every single word you've said. If there's any falsehood in your words, Chuanfu said hurriedly, if there is any falsehood in my words, I will make sure that I die a horrible death. Men! Gu Shengyin called out loudly. Someone came in from outside. Take him away and watch him carefully. Don't let him suffer any losses. Yes. Gu Shengyin rubbed her eyes tiredly. Bai Xian, who was beside her, quickly came over to give her a massage. She was also a little nervous. It was not suitable for her to know about this kind of thing today. Don't worry. I'm not the kind of person who will get rid of someone once they've outlived their usefulness. Gu Shengyin seemed to know what she was thinking and said lightly. Chapter 623. When Gu Shengyin sent someone to verify Chuan Fu's words, the Phoenix Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Palace also received the news. Your Majesty, do you need me to bring that person here? The leader of the secret guards asked. The Phoenix Emperor's expression turned cold. Chang'e can handle this kind of thing. You don't need to make a decision on your own. The leader of the secret guard's heart tightened. He replied, yes. So the Emperor's trust in the Crown Prince had reached this level? With the evidence provided by Chuan Fu, it was not difficult for the people of Clear Phoenix Palace to find out the truth. Gu Shengyin held the results of the investigation and did not speak for a long time. She went to Heavenly Phoenix Palace in the afternoon. Only this? The Phoenix Emperor looked at the evidence sent by her eldest daughter. The mastermind behind everything was Shi Qingyi. But he was just the son of a minister. Without the help of others, how could he have done this? Gu Shengyin lowered her eyes. Son only found this. Pa. The Phoenix Emperor slammed the things in her hands on the table. Chang'e, how did I teach you since you were young? The Phoenix Emperor looked coldly at her eldest daughter who she had high hopes for. As a ruler, the most taboo thing is to be soft-hearted. This time, I won't argue with you. Whether you really can't find out or don't want to continue investigating, I won't pursue it. I'll do as you wish and end it here. But Chang'e, this is definitely the last time. Gu Shengyin opened her mouth but did not say anything in the end. She respectfully retreated. The room returned to silence. The Phoenix Emperor closed her eyes tiredly. Huan Xian tactfully came over and gently massaged her shoulders. His Highness the Crown Prince has a pure heart. Your Majesty, this is because you taught him well. The Phoenix Emperor said helplessly, you don't have to speak up for her. I don't believe that she can't see that there's someone behind this. She clearly doesn't want to continue investigating. There were only 3 people in the entire Heavenly Emperor dynasty who could make Chang'e swallow this pain and still protect them. Fine, this time, I'll do as you wish. You still have hopes for brotherly affection. I won't be the bad guy. I only hope that the person you cherish in your heart can really understand your pains. Or else, Phoenix opened her eyes and a cold glint flashed across her eyes. Let me clear these obstacles for you. Gu Shengyin returned to her Clear Phoenix Palace. System, am I especially bad? Gu Shengyin asked. She clearly knew who the mastermind behind the scenes was, but deliberately pretended that she didn't want to pursue the matter. With the Phoenix Emperor's intelligence, she only needed to make a little deduction to know who she wanted to protect. On the surface, Huang Minga seemed to have escaped the crisis this time. But in reality, in the Phoenix Monarch's heart, she was the one who would never have the chance to rise again. The system replied, in the palace, benevolence and kindness are the most fatal shortcomings. It was already the best that he could do as long as others didn't offend him. Only the Holy Mother, not Gu Shengyin, would be magnanimous enough to forgive and not seek revenge after being hurt. Gu Shengyin also smiled. You're right. I didn't come to this world to reform people. For some people, if you treat them well, they would cherish and be grateful. But for some people, if you treat them well, they would only take it for granted and would even want to use you to climb up. Gu Shengyin didn't ask the Phoenix Emperor to execute Huang Minga immediately because this time, there was no way to completely destroy her once and for all. Only by disappointing the Phoenix Monarch again and again would she not be able to obtain a trace of pity and forgiveness the next time she did something. Chapter 624. Marquis Wenyuan's Estate. Shi Qingyi saw the tray in the servant's hands. "Young Master Shi, please." The servant stared at him coldly. Marquis Wenyuan's husband was still struggling. "I want to see His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness likes Qingyi very much. He'll be willing to save me." Slap. Marquis Wenyuan couldn't take it anymore and slapped his husband. "Someone, my husband is possessed. Take him to the backyard and don't go out for a while." Stupid thing, didn't he see what this vile spawn had done? He had framed His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness was probably going to tear him apart right now. Why would he save him? Marquis Wenyuan had been in a terrible fix recently. Marquis Wenyuan was from the Empress's maiden family and the Crown Prince's maternal family. They were staunch supporters of the Crown Prince. But this idiot of hers, as the future Crown Prince, had actually exposed the Crown Prince's treason. She recalled how her colleagues had looked at her as if she was an idiot when she went to court. She felt ashamed and angry. When she entered the palace, the Royal Highness, who had always been respectful to her, reprimanded her for the first time, saying that she hadn't taught her son well. In any case, Marquis Wenyuan felt that he had lost all face during this time. Now, this vile spawn's so-called evidence was actually fake. He actually had the guts to frame His Royal Highness. The moment he heard the servant's secret edict, Marquis Wenyuan hated that his body was so strong that he didn't faint on the spot. It was over. No matter how close Marquis Wenyuan's estate was to the Crown Prince, after this incident, even if this vile spawn came to pay for it with his life, there would be a rift between the two sides. Shi Qingyi stared at the small cup of wine on the tray. He knew what it was. It was something that could take his life. He didn't want to die. He couldn't die. He hadn't enjoyed all the glory and wealth yet. Why should he die? "I want to see His Royal Highness. She likes me so much. She dotes on me so much. Yes. She won't let me die." The palace servant coldly stared at him. This eldest son of the Marquis of Wenyuan's estate, his mind was not clear. Even if His Highness the Crown Prince had great affection for him, when encountering this kind of situation, he would not have any pity. Shi Qingyi shouted twice and seemed to have realized something. She suddenly changed her tone. "I want to see His Highness the Eighth Prince. I want to see His Highness the Eighth Prince." The palace maid's expression changed. Some words were not for them to hear. She glanced at the people around her, and the palace servants who came with her instantly understood her meaning. The two of them restrained Shi Qingyi. The palace servant forced his mouth open and poured the entire cup of wine down his throat. This was the most potent poison in the palace, which could kill at the sight of blood. Shi Qingyi's body began to convulse the moment the glass of wine entered her stomach. The palace servants watched him breathe his last with their own eyes. The palace servant who delivered the decree looked at Marquis Wenyuan, who turned his head to the side because he couldn't bear to look at the scene. He said faintly, "His Majesty has decreed that the eldest son of Marquis Wenyuan's family has suddenly died. It is not suitable to be buried in the ancestral grave. I'm afraid it will bring disaster to the Wen family." Marquis Wenyuan suddenly turned his head. This meant that Qingyi could not enjoy the incense offerings after death and could only be a lonely ghost. His Majesty actually hated Qingyi to this extent. Her shoulders slumped, and she seemed to have aged several years in an instant. This official understands. His Highness the Crown Prince was His Majesty's reverse scale. No one could touch him. Chapter 625. In Huang Minga's residence, when she heard the news from Marquis Wenyuan's residence, Huang Minga knew that the matter of her framing Huang Chang'e had been exposed. Then she, thinking of the words she said to Huang Chang'e when she rushed to clear Phoenix Palace, Huang Minga hated herself for being so stupid. Huang Chang'e would never let her off. Huang Minga anxiously waited for the arrival of the imperial edict. She was even guessing how the Empress Mother would deal with her. Framing the Crown Prince was a huge crime. If the Empress Mother was a little more ruthless, Huang Minga shuddered. She didn't dare to think further. Who knew that after waiting for a few days, there was no imperial edict from the palace? The matter in Marquis Wenyuan's residence also calmed down. This matter seemed to have passed just like that. A few days later, Huang Minga finally reacted. She was fine. Could it be that Shi Qingyi was sincere towards her and actually gritted her teeth and didn't expose her? Huang Minga thought happily. But on second thought, she remembered that she had confessed to Huang Changge before. She definitely couldn't find evidence of her. Huang Minga secretly felt proud. So what if she knows I did it? Without evidence, no matter how much the Empress Mother dotes on you, you can't do anything. She thought that although she was grounded now, her father was still in the palace. For her father's sake, the Empress Mother wouldn't lock her up for too long. After all, she was the Empress Mother's legitimate daughter. Her future wouldn't be too bad. If Gu Xingyi knew of her thoughts, she would probably laugh out loud. This pitiful and hateful girl, what kind of sweet dreams was she having? However, she was now faced with a dilemma. That's Shi Qingyi, it's my fault for not recognizing her. Originally, I planned to wait for you to reach 18 years old before holding a grand wedding for you. Who would have thought that something like this would happen? Gu Xingyi listened helplessly to his father's nagging in the imperial concubine's palace. I've already decided. On the 8th of next month, the palace will hold a general election. Those young masters of the right age will all be sent into the palace to be selected. Changge, not only are you going to get married, but also your sisters who are about the same age as you are going to get married. Feng Jun actually had some other thoughts. Huang Minga was already 14 years old and had reached the age where she should be married. But she was now under house arrest in the princess residence outside the palace. The Phoenix Emperor seemed to hate this daughter of his and didn't allow anyone to mention her. Now, using the opportunity of the general election, he could try to bring it up to the Phoenix Emperor. Gu Xingyi could more or less guess the royal concubine's thoughts, but she didn't have any objections. It would be best if Huang Minga continued to cause trouble. If she were to settle down, it would be hard for her to make a move. However, speaking of the talent show, Gu Xingyi rejected it in her heart. He wanted her to choose many men from a large group of men to be her lord, and lord servant. Gu Xingyi felt a chill just thinking about that scene. Moreover, with a certain man's jealousy, she probably wouldn't be able to live in peace. Father, I'm not in a hurry, you're already 18 years old, why aren't you in a hurry? The royal concubine's voice came from outside. She wore a noble and dignified crown on her head and wore a magnificent phoenix robe. It was obvious that she had just left court. When I was your age, you were already born. The Phoenix Emperor glanced at his daughter, obviously disagreeing with what she said. Chapter 626. Gu Xingyi quickly put on a smile and pulled the Phoenix Emperor to sit down. She didn't bow to the Phoenix Emperor. The Phoenix Emperor was already used to her daughter's intimacy and didn't mind it. On the other hand, the Phoenix Emperor was surprised by the mother and daughter's interaction. However, Changge could act coquettishly, but he couldn't. Your subject greets your majesty. Gu Xingyi quickly moved to the side. The Phoenix Emperor waved her hand. Feng Qing doesn't need to be so courteous. Only then did the Phoenix Emperor sit up. He was undoubtedly happy. It was naturally a good thing that his eldest daughter was doted on by the Phoenix Emperor. Mother Empress. Gu Xingyi dragged out her words. The Phoenix Emperor didn't move. If it's about the election, then there's no need to say anything. Gu Xingyi was a little discouraged. She knew that as a crown princess, it was impossible for her to delay marrying the emperor. After thinking for a while, she changed the topic. Then, Mother Empress, can you promise me that I will choose the emperor myself? The person who will accompany me for the rest of my life should be someone pleasing to my eyes, right? The Phoenix Emperor thought for a while. To a certain extent, you can. However, you have to find an emperor who will be beneficial to you in the future. Gu Xingyi thought to herself, how would I know what his status is in this world? Her expression became serious and she said proudly, Mother Empress, you're wrong. I think that only an incompetent ruler needs to borrow the power of the emperor's family to strengthen his position. A ruler who can't even control his own courtiers is not a qualified ruler. The Phoenix Emperor's expression changed slightly. She looked at her daughter with gratification and pride in her eyes. Such a dazzling and proud Chang'e was taught by her. In the next moment, the domineering aura on Gu Xingyi's face disappeared. She looked at the Phoenix Emperor with a flattering smile. Of course, Mother Empress, you're different. You're a domineering ruler. People like Mother Empress and Father Emperor are just icing on the cake. It's better. If her words were heard by someone with ulterior motives, she would be attacked for being disrespectful to the Phoenix Emperor. After all, the marriage between the Phoenix Monarch and the Phoenix Monarch was more related to benefits. The Phoenix Emperor finally couldn't hold back her smile anymore. She glared at Gu Xingyin and scolded jokingly, "You have no manners. How dare you tease me?" Although he said that, there was no hint of blame in his tone. Gu Xingyin took the opportunity and asked, "Then, your daughter's husband?" The Phoenix Emperor muttered, "Since you have the courage to do so, as long as your family background is clean, we can allow you to make your own decisions." Gu Xingyin was overjoyed. Mother Empress is wise. The Phoenix Emperor smiled faintly. If I hadn't agreed just now, wouldn't I be unwise? Gu Xingyin's expression turned solemn. How is that possible? Mother Empress will always be the greatest ruler in your son's heart. The Phoenix Emperor was very pleased to hear this. In the end, Gu Xingyin added, "Since that's the case, why don't you promise me one more thing, Mother Empress?" She was really pushing her luck. The Phoenix Emperor rolled her eyes at her. "Speak." Gu Xingyin deliberated for a moment. "Your daughter hasn't learned how to get along with a husband. I wonder if Mother Empress is willing to not take in a secondary husband and concubines during the wedding." The Phoenix Emperor thought for a moment. This was good too. Sir would have a legitimate daughter, so his position as the husband would be guaranteed. She said, "You can discuss such a small matter with your father." The Phoenix Monarch, who was watching his eldest daughter interact with the Phoenix Emperor, hurriedly nodded in agreement. Chapter 627. After the Phoenix Emperor left, the imperial concubine king slowly discussed these matters with Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin felt a headache and hurriedly said, "Father, you can make the decision on these matters." The imperial concubine king was silent for a moment and suddenly said, "Yuan Minga." When he saw the interaction between Chang'e and the Phoenix, he suddenly realized that he had underestimated the extent of his eldest daughter's favor. If Chang'e was willing to plead for Minga with His Majesty would definitely listen to her. Gu Xingyin didn't wait for him to finish and her face turned cold. "I remember that I still have something to do in the palace, so I'll take my leave first." After that, she bowed to the imperial concubine king and was about to leave. "Stop." The imperial concubine king sternly stopped her. He dismissed his servants, leaving only the father and daughter in the empty hall. He walked to Gu Xingyin, took her hand, and said earnestly, "Chang'e, I know that Minga did something wrong, but you are sisters after all." Gu Xingyin sneered, "A sister who stabbed her own sister?" The imperial concubine king paused. Minga really didn't do well in this matter. He sighed, "She's still young. Chang'e, can't you forgive her for once? You used to love her so much." Gu Xingyin was unmoved. "Father, 14 is not young. When I was 14, I started to listen to politics with my mother. And because I used to love her, I hate her as much as I loved her." She looked straight at the imperial concubine king. "Father, I think I've done everything I can for her. Do you really think that it's only Shi Qingyi who can frame me and accuse me of treason?" The imperial concubine king's face changed greatly. "You mean?" Gu Xingyin nodded. "I hid this from my mother. Father, as her sister, this is the last time I'll do something for her. I can't afford to have a sister who deliberately wants me dead." She didn't say anything else. She bowed to the Phoenix Monarch and walked out. This time, the Feng Jun didn't ask her to stay. Evil creature, this evil creature. Alone in the hall, the imperial concubine trembled with anger. 15 days later, there would be a general election in the palace. All the noble families sent their sons of suitable age to the palace. This time, everyone knew that the Phoenix Monarch was choosing the prince for His Highness the Crown Prince. If anyone was lucky enough to be chosen by the Phoenix Monarch or His Highness the Crown Prince, then they would be able to reach the heavens in a single day. Even if she wasn't chosen by the Crown Prince, the other Crown Princes were about to get married. Becoming the Crown Princess was not a bad choice. The nobles of the Sky Emperor dynasty were quite enthusiastic this time. The imperial concubine lord sat in the high hall and looked at the young masters of the great clans. This was the final palace selection. Those who could enter this place were all talented and good-looking young masters. Gu Xingyin was at the back of the hall, looking at these young masters. No. She felt strange. She thought that her lover should be among these people, but who knew that she couldn't find him? When the young masters finished showing their talents, the imperial concubine lord asked people to take them out. Chang'e, how is it? Is there anyone you like? The imperial concubine lord asked. Gu Xingyin shook her head. The imperial concubine lord couldn't help but complain, "Child, your standards are too high. All the best young masters of our Sky Emperor dynasty are here, but you don't like any of them?" Chapter 628. Gu Xingyin used silence to express her tacit agreement. If the crown prince didn't like it, there was nothing the Phoenix monarch could do. When those families returned home, they had been waiting for the imperial edict. In the end, the third and fourth princesses had been decided. Only the crown prince hadn't been decided. Not to mention the crown prince, even the secondary prince hadn't been conferred a title. Everyone was discussing this, not knowing what the imperial palace's attitude was. The Phoenix monarch was also worried. His eldest daughter was good at everything, but she seemed to have been raised to be too arrogant. Her standards were too high. But no matter what he said, even if he was angry, Gu Xingyin was unwilling to compromise. She said that she didn't like any of them. Even if they were to marry in the future, the two would likely treat each other with respect. For the first time, the Phoenix monarch felt that being too close to his daughter wasn't a good thing. If it was in the past, he would have directly issued an imperial edict to bestow a marriage. Chang'e wouldn't have said anything. But now, she was tugging at his sleeve with an unwilling expression. The Phoenix monarch found that he couldn't bear to force her. Even the Phoenix monarch himself felt that he should find the best crown prince in the world for his eldest daughter. Just like that, half a month passed. During the Phoenix monarch's 10,000th birthday festival, people from a neighboring country came from the distant grasslands. Speaking of which, the neighboring Qin dynasty and Heavenly Phoenix dynasty were two completely different countries. It was said that the Qin dynasty was the complete opposite of Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. Men were emperors and officials, while women stayed at home to assist their husbands and teach their children. Even giving birth was a woman's matter. In the minds of the people of Heavenly Phoenix dynasty, this was completely impossible. In the eyes of the people of the Qin dynasty, everything in Heavenly Phoenix dynasty was decided by women. It was simply incomprehensible. It was precisely because the two dynasties had completely different systems that the two sides didn't have any conflicts. For thousands of years, they had lived in harmony and even had a good relationship. For the Phoenix monarch's birthday, the Qin dynasty had sent an envoy to represent the Qin dynasty's emperor. "Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, Heavenly Phoenix dynasty is just as the rumors say. Those who come out are all women." A private conversation came from the carriage at the front of a luxurious caravan. "It is quite interesting." A languid and gorgeous voice sounded. The voice from before continued, "A woman becoming an emperor and an official is simply unheard of. It's really strange." The man with the gorgeous voice said, "Nothing is impossible. We think they're strange, but in their eyes, they might think we're strange." This line of magnificent carriages attracted the attention of many people on the road. The people who came and went were all guessing who was sitting in the carriages. Finally, the day of the Phoenix Emperor's birthday arrived. The Phoenix Emperor was holding a grand banquet in the Heavenly Phoenix Palace's Heavenly Phoenix Hall. Sitting next to her was the royal concubine, who was dressed to the nines. As the crown prince, Gu Xingyin sat on the first seat to the left of the Phoenix monarch. Huang Minga, who had been grounded for several months, finally took this opportunity to be released. She was thinking of using the precious gift she had found to regain the Empress's favor. The envoy of the great Qin dynasty is here to congratulate Her Majesty, the Phoenix monarch of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. The eunuch's voice attracted everyone's attention. All the officials present turned to look at the entrance of the hall. Chapter 629. Indeed, it was as the Prince of Yong had said. The subjects of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty were very curious about the great Qin Empire. They had heard that the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty only had men as officials. Then all the envoys today were men? Caught off guard, a purple robe appeared before everyone's eyes. Hiss. Gu Shengyin could clearly hear everyone's sharp intake of breath. The man in the lead was dressed in a gorgeous purple robe. At the foot of the robe, there were countless large unknown flowers in full bloom. However, no matter how luxurious the robe was, everyone could only see his face. It was a soul-stirring and beautiful face. It was gorgeous and ostentatious to the extreme, but it did not appear weak or feminine at all. It was completely different from the frail and powdered men of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. This was a kind of domineering and ostentatious beauty. Huang Minga stared at this man in a daze, even forgetting the wine by her hand. There was no woman who did not want such a man. It was not just her. Almost everyone in the hall had their gazes stolen by this man. Gu Shengyin was also looking at him. However, she was different from the others. She was only surprised. She had not expected that he was not from the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. The Phoenix Emperor was also dazed for a second. However, she was experienced and knowledgeable. Her temperament was not something that ordinary people could compare to. She quickly regained her composure. She subconsciously glanced at her eldest daughter. As expected, Chang'e was looking at that man. Her gaze was filled with shock and interest, unlike the majority of the people in the hall who were infatuated. The Phoenix Emperor nodded inwardly. This was the bearing that the heir apparent of a country should have. The great Qin dynasty's envoy, Qin Ke, represents my emperor to wish Her Majesty the Phoenix Emperor of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty good fortune and good health. His voice pulled everyone back from their thoughts. The Phoenix Emperor stood. The Prince of Yong is too courteous. Come, give him a seat. In order to express the importance of the envoy, Qin Ke's seat was very close to the front, just across from Gu Shengyin. Qin Ke she had just sat down when he noticed the woman sitting across from him. She didn't look very old. She was wearing a fiery red robe with a phoenix embroidered on it. Her hair was neatly tied up with a golden crown, revealing her perfect and beautiful face. Her long eyebrows were raised, and her phoenix eyes were slightly raised. There was an indescribable sharpness and elegance to her. She seemed to have noticed his gaze and smiled at him. Then, she raised her glass and drank it in one gulp. Qin Shueshi knew who she was. Only His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Sky Emperor Dynasty, could sit in this position. He felt that His Highness was very interesting, so he also revealed a smile. He raised the cup in his hand and drank it in return. As the Crown Prince, Gu Shengyin's every word and action would attract the attention of countless people. Any movement on her side would naturally not escape the eyes of the crowd. As for Qin Keishi, with merely his appearance, he had attracted the gazes of countless people. The interaction between the two fell into the eyes of the people in the palace. Many people who were interested in Qin Keishi were disappointed. It seemed that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince was also interested in His Royal Highness the Prince of Yong of the Great Qin. No one had the guts to do so. As for Huang Minga, she looked at the two people who seemed to be getting along very well with unwillingness. Her heart was filled with jealousy and hatred. In her eyes, Huang Chang'e was only relying on her status as the Crown Prince. If she were the one sitting in that seat today, then the Prince of Yong of the Great Qin would also see her. She had never been willing to accept this. Chapter 630. By the end of the banquet, Gu Shengyin was already a bit tipsy and decided to take a stroll in the imperial gardens. Your Highness, put this on. Be careful not to catch a cold. Her trusted aide, Bai Xian, came out with a white cloak. It was already late autumn. If the crown prince were to contract typhoid, everyone in Clear Phoenix Palace would suffer. Gu Shengyin didn't want to make things difficult for them, so she obediently allowed Bai Xian to drape the cloak over her. This princess is just taking a stroll. My head is a bit dizzy. Who is it? Her gaze sharpened as she stared coldly at a certain direction, completely unlike a drunk person. This prince just happens to be a bit drunk and couldn't sleep at night, so this prince came out for a stroll. Apologies for being rude to your highness. A gorgeous and seductive voice sounded. Gu Shengyin blushed the moment she saw Bai Xian. So it's the Prince of Yong of the Great Qin. Gu Shengyin withdrew her gaze and looked at Bai Xian. Go and bring this princess a bowl of hangover soup. Your highness, should I summon someone to serve you? Bai Xian asked after some consideration. No need, Gu Shengyin said indifferently. Bai Xian withdrew, leaving only the two of them in the Imperial Gardens. The Imperial Gardens weren't completely dark. A lantern hung high at a certain distance. Although it wasn't as bright as day, it was enough for the two of them to see each other clearly. Qin Kai still looked the same as he did during the day, still wearing his gorgeous purple robes. His expression was clear and bright. He didn't seem to be drunk at all. On the other hand, Gu Shengyin really was a bit drunk. Qin Kai carefully sized her up. The imperial family of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty was renowned for their beauty, and the crown prince, Feng Changge, was one of the best. Unlike her previous arrogant appearance, the current crown prince's jade-white face was tinged with a faint red glow. Her eyes seemed to be half open, carrying a trace of blurriness. Her facial features appeared much softer. In particular, the soft white fur around her neck made her appear much more adorable. When Qin Kai came to his senses, he discovered that he had been lost in thought while looking at the crown prince. He face-bombed. It seemed that he was really a little drunk. But in the next moment, the person sitting on the stone chair suddenly opened his eyes. Gu Shengyin stood up and walked to Qin Kai's side. The women of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty were tall and slender. Even though she was standing, she wasn't shorter than Qin Quebec. Gu Shengyin inched closer to Qin Quebec. Qin Kai raised his eyebrows. He wanted to see what this crown prince wanted to do. Her hot breath fell on his neck, making him inexplicably nervous. By his ear was the clear teasing of a woman. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, this empress admires your graceful bearing. Are you willing to remain in my Heavenly Phoenix dynasty and be this empress's official ruler? Qin Kai's expression changed. He actually didn't dodge or evade. Instead, he reached out with both hands and easily hugged the slender waist of the person in his arms. It felt really good to the touch. Qin Kai discovered that he was actually somewhat infatuated with this kind of feeling. Before Gu Shengyin could open her mouth, Qin Kai interrupted her. Imitating Gu Shengyin, Qin Kai moved his head close to her ear and softly said, "What a coincidence. This prince also admires your Imperial Highness' graceful bearing. I wonder if your Imperial Highness is willing to accompany this prince back to the Great Qin and be a happy Wangfei?" If there were any bystanders watching at this moment. The two of them were tightly hugging each other, their necks intertwined and their breaths intertwined. It was an indescribable intimacy. Gu Shengyin laughed inwardly. This person really wasn't willing to suffer the slightest loss. Chapter 631. Your Highness. Seeing this scene, Bai Xian hurriedly turned around. This servant did not see anything. She hurriedly knelt down. Gu Shengyin was amused. Qin Kai also let go of her, as if nothing had happened between the two. I am going back to rest. Your Highness, Prince of Yong, you should also rest early. Qin Kai nodded reservedly, watching the master and servant walk away. When the two of them were out of sight, he stretched out his hand and gently touched his left ear. The boiling temperature showed that the owner of this body was not as calm as he appeared to be. Just as she said, Bai Xian didn't see or hear anything. Gu Shengyin liked this kind of subordinate very much. Bai Xian was very clear about her identity and position. This kind of subordinate would save a lot of trouble for her master. It was rare for the Qin dynasty's envoys to come to the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. The Phoenix Emperor naturally had to keep them for a while to show off the glory of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. It was just that the Phoenix Emperor could not lower herself to accompany the envoys. The other party was also a member of the imperial family. It would be more appropriate for the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty to send a princess to accompany the envoys. Before the Phoenix Emperor could decide on a candidate, someone had volunteered. All of them want to accompany the envoys to experience the glory of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty? The Phoenix Emperor raised her eyebrows. The Crown Prince, the 6th Princess, and several young ladies of the imperial family. Even the 8th Princess, Huang Minga, who was imprisoned in her residence, expressed their willingness to share the Phoenix Emperor's burden. Thinking of the Prince of Yang's face, which could bring disaster to the country, the Phoenix Emperor could understand their thoughts. The 3rd and 4th princesses had just been engaged and were unwilling to overstep their bounds. Otherwise, there might be a few more names on the list. The Phoenix Emperor glanced at her. She was so biased that she could not even see a shadow. Of course, she could guess the result. Gu Shengyin had been ordered by the Phoenix Emperor to be responsible for receiving, accompanying, and arranging all activities during the visit of the Qin dynasty's envoys. His Highness, Prince of Yong, was indeed a dragon among men. If Chang'e could capture his heart, it would be a great honor for the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. This was what the Phoenix Emperor thought. The next day, Gu Shengyin arrived at the temporary residence of the Prince of Yong. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, in accordance with my Imperial Majesty's decree, I am responsible for receiving the Great Qin's envoys during this period of time. Qin Ke bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Highness. The two of them were polite and courteous to each other. It was impossible to tell that they had been intimate in the Imperial Garden last night. Today, I will bring everyone around our Phoenix City, Gu Shengyin suggested. Great Qin's ambassadors were quite curious about the customs here, and they all agreed. However, this consort and everyone here needs to change our clothes, Gu Shengyin said. One could only see the real Phoenix City if they were dressed casually. A group of people dressed up and left the palace in a low-key manner. However, being low-key was only relative. After all, Gu Shengyin and Qin Ke were both very attractive. This was especially true for Qin Ke. She had already lost count of the number of enthusiastic onlookers she had received along the way. In the end, he couldn't bear it any longer and accepted the curtain that Gu Shengyin handed to him. Ke, don't mind them. They don't have any ill intentions. They were only subdued by your elegance, Gu Shengyin said, holding back her laughter. If her voice didn't contain such schadenfreude, Qin Ke would be quite willing to believe her. He gnashed his teeth and replied, Chang'e overpraises me. With Chang'e's character and appearance, if she were to go to my Great Qin, I'm afraid that she would receive even worse treatment than me. Chapter 632. Apart from this small interlude, the Great Qin ambassadors were still very satisfied. Sometimes, knowing something was one thing, but seeing it with one's own eyes was another. In this capital city, most of the people walking outside were women. These women were all tall and strong, and some of them were even pushing carts or carrying things. Some of them were even loudly hawking their wares. On the other hand, most of the men on the streets had delicate bodies and delicate faces. Some of them even put on powder on their faces and held handkerchiefs in their hands. The Great Qin ambassadors felt that their horizons had been broadened. Looking at the women who were as strong as men, the married ambassadors couldn't help but shudder when they thought of their wives. The Great Qin Empire was more suitable for them. It's getting late. There's a special restaurant up ahead. Everyone, please come with me for a meal. Gu Shengyin looked at the time and said. At that moment, there was a commotion in front of them. Gu Shengyin turned around and looked. It seemed that a horse in front of them had suddenly gone crazy and was charging towards the crowd. In that short moment, the horse was already galloping towards the envoys. Be careful. Before Qin Ke could react, he was pulled back and couldn't help but take a few steps back. He subconsciously looked in Gu Xingyin's direction and only relaxed when he saw that she was standing in a safe place. Gu Xingyin's expression became serious. Suddenly, she moved her feet and her body became as light as a swallow. Her figure flashed and she sat firmly on the horse. She lowered her body and pulled the reins with both hands, forcibly stopping the horse's advance. The horse neighed and raised its front hooves high, finally settling down. Gu Xingyin only then noticed that the person on the horse was a young and handsome man. Qin Kei's face turned cold. He looked at Gu Xingyin sitting on the horse. Because she had to pull the reins, her hands were wrapped around the person in front of her. To others, it looked indescribably intimate. He clearly saw the young master's face turn red. Gu Xingyin seemed to have realized the inappropriateness of this posture. She nimbly dismounted from the horse and sternly said to the young man, "Riding is not allowed in the downtown area. It is easy to hurt others. Don't you know this rule?" The young man blushed and mumbled, "Today is the first time I've done this. There's an emergency at home." Seeing his good attitude, Gu Xingyin softened her tone. "No matter what the reason is, rules are rules. You can go to the city patrol office to receive your punishment later." The young master's expression changed, but he still agreed. Gu Xingyin turned around and prepared to leave, but she was stopped by the person behind her. "This young lady, may I ask which family you are from? Tomorrow, I will personally pay you a visit to thank you." When he said this, his face turned red. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that he had fallen in love with her. "Gu Xingyin," she said indifferently, "it's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. Just be careful in the future. As for thanking me, there's no need." The young master left with a bit of disappointment. When Gu Xingyin returned to the envoy's side, she heard Qin Kei's teasing laughter. "I didn't expect that I would see a good show before I even ate the special dishes. Changa's play of the hero saving the beauty is really wonderful." It was a compliment, but the jealousy in his tone was not concealed at all. Chapter 633. Gu Xingyin stared blankly for a moment. Soon after, she approached Qin Kei and whispered into his ear, "This empress would like to play the hero saving the damsel in distress with Quebec. Unfortunately, Kei won't give this empress this opportunity." Qin Kei's expression didn't change. If Chang'e is willing to sacrifice her image, this prince is naturally willing to be the hero saving the damsel in distress. As the two whispered to each other, the envoys from the great Qin Empire became extremely worried. Could it be that His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, had taken a liking to the crown prince of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty? Although this crown prince had an extraordinary bearing and a rarely seen beauty, making her a perfect match with His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, however, she was the crown prince of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. It was impossible for the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty to allow their crown prince to be married off. Could it be? The envoys were terrified. Could it be that His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, wanted to marry her off to the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty? Regardless of how uneasy the envoys from the great Qin Empire were, Gu Xingyin and Qin Kei were all smiles. One appeared to be in high spirits, while the other appeared to be in high spirits. In the following days, Gu Xingyin brought the envoys to experience the various sights and sounds of Phoenix City. After a few days, the envoys' impression of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty changed greatly. Although it was strange for a woman to be the head of a household, the envoys from the Great Qin gradually grew accustomed to the fact that the commoners of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty lived in prosperity and that the women's ability to earn money was not inferior to that of the men of the Great Qin Empire. However, His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, and the Crown Prince of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty were truly too intimate, giving them a headache. However, the envoys couldn't do anything about His Imperial Highness. The Prince of Yong was the youngest son of the Emperor and Empress of the Great Qin Empire. Above him was his elder brother, who was nearly 10 years older than him, the future monarch of the Great Qin Empire. The three people with the highest status in the Great Qin all doted on His Imperial Highness greatly, granting him almost all of his requests. This had nurtured his uncompromising personality. If he made a decision, the envoys couldn't persuade him otherwise. However, Gu Xingyin felt that although the two were somewhat ambiguous these days, there was no substantial progress. She was very sure that Qin Keishi wasn't uninterested in her. If the two of them were given enough time, she was confident that the two of them would naturally be together. However, Qin Keishi was still a member of the Qin dynasty. He had only come to Heavenly Phoenix on a diplomatic mission. Sooner or later, he would have to return. Seeing that it was getting closer and closer to the day when Great Qin's envoys would leave, Gu Xingyin felt that she should give them a strong dose of medicine. Night fell. Gu Xingyin avoided the palace servants and arrived at the palace where Qin Kai lived. Coming uninvited in the middle of the night is not the style of a country's crown prince, Qin Kai said with a smile. Gu Xingyin did not smile. Qin Kai felt a little strange. He turned around and saw Gu Xingyin's serious expression. What's wrong? Unconsciously, his expression became serious. Gu Xingyin stared at him without blinking. Keishi, you know how I feel about you, don't you? Qin Keishi was speechless. He hadn't expected that the other party would say it so bluntly. However, when he thought about it, the women of Heavenly Phoenix weren't as reserved as the women of his empire. He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled carelessly and asked, "What does your Imperial Highness wish to say?" He saw that when he asked this question, a trace of disappointment appeared on the other party's face. This caused his heart to tremble, and a trace of unease quietly spread through him. Gu Xingyin stared at him and asked seriously, Keishi, if I were to propose marriage to you as an official monarch, would you be willing to accept? Chapter 634. Qin Kai looked into the other party's dark and affectionate eyes. He could clearly see his own reflection in them. He could see the anticipation and adoration in Gu Xingyin's eyes. Inexplicably, Qin Kai felt that his answer would be very important. But after a long silence, he said softly, Chang'e, if I ask you to put down everything in the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty and return to the Great Qin with me, would you be willing? He saw that after he said this, the light in the other party's eyes dimmed. Qin Kai suddenly had the urge to take back what he had just said, but he didn't. Gu Xingyin smiled and said easily, I was just joking with you. Kay, you know that I can't leave the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. She raised her head and looked out the window, saying, it's getting late. You should rest early. Finished speaking, she turned and left. Qin Keishi looked at her back. She was tall and straight, but she exuded a sense of loneliness. He shook his head and laughed inwardly. How could someone as arrogant and unrestrained as Chang'e be lonely? But the next day, the official who came to receive the Great Qin's envoy changed. Qin Kai's heart jumped, asking why His Highness the Crown Prince hadn't come. The official smiled and replied, His Highness the Crown Prince is busy. His Majesty has ordered that I will be in charge of everyone's affairs for the rest of the day. Qin Kai smiled politely, wondering if the other party was unhappy because of last night's events. At worst, the next time he saw her, what would happen after seeing her? Qin Kai hadn't thought about this question. But in the following days, he didn't see Gu Xingyin again. Even when he personally went to Clear Phoenix Palace, the news he received was that the Crown Prince wasn't there. No matter how slow he was, Qin Kai understood that Chang'e didn't want to see him. He was also arrogant. Since the other party didn't want to see him, he wasn't willing to put down his face and stick close to her. In the main hall of Clear Phoenix Palace, Gu Xingyin was dressed in plain white robes. She asked Bai Xian, who had just entered, has she left? Bai Xian answered yes. She did not understand. From the looks of it, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince had feelings for His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong. Why did he not meet him? Of course, this was not a question she should ask. She could only hide it in the bottom of her heart. Great Qin's ambassadors will be leaving in a few days, right? Gu Xingyin suddenly asked. Bai Xian replied respectfully, yes, Your Highness. There are less than 5 days left. Gu Xingyin raised her head and drank a glass of wine with waning interest. Qin Keishi, let's see if you can really harden your heart and leave when the time comes. 2 more days passed like this. Qin Kai suddenly realized that the palace was bustling with activity. All the palace servants were in a hurry. Out of curiosity, he stopped a palace servant and asked, "Is there something big going on in the palace?" That palace servant's face reddened for a moment when she suddenly met his gaze. She paused for a moment before replying, "Yes, His Highness the Phoenix Crown Prince is currently choosing a successor for His Highness the Crown Prince. Our Clear Phoenix Palace will have a new master very soon." Qin Kai only felt a rumbling sound, as if something had exploded in his mind. Successor. She was actually preparing for a wedding? A flame of fury rose from the bottom of his heart, dyeing his eyes red. A few days ago, she had solemnly vowed to tell him her feelings. Now, she wanted to marry the successor? Qin Kai. She walked towards Clear Phoenix Palace with a cold expression. Chapter 635. I am looking for your Imperial Highness, the Crown Prince. Qin Kai coldly spoke to the palace servant. The servant smiled respectfully. Unfortunately, your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong. Our Imperial Highness has some urgent matters to attend to. Qin Kai sneered. He's not here again? He didn't care. The servant was about to force his way in. The servant panicked. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, what are you doing? Trespassing into Clear Phoenix Palace is a major crime. Imperial bodyguards had already come over to stop Qin Quebec. While they were still in a deadlock, Bai Xian walked out from inside. Everyone, stop. Bai Xian glanced at Qin Kai, respectfully saying, Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, our Imperial Highness invites you in. Qin Kai followed her into Clear Phoenix Palace with a cold expression. Arriving at the entrance to the main hall, Bai Xian tactfully stopped in her tracks. His Imperial Highness is inside. Qin Kai stepped in. The first thing he saw was the woman drinking wine at the head of the hall. She was wearing a loose white robe and her hair was loose. She had a bit of a scholarly air about her. Seeing him enter, Gu Shengyin smiled. Kai-shi, you've come. Accompany me for a drink. Qin Kai seriously sized her up. This woman's current appearance was different from all the other appearances he had seen. Unlike His Royal Highness, who was dressed in formal attire, her movements were indescribably flirtatious. Wherever her gaze moved, there was an indescribable charm. Qin Kai couldn't help but admit that this Huang Changa had the capital to make all men intoxicated. All men, of course, included Qin Quebec. However, he didn't do as Gu Shengyin wished. Instead, he stood there motionlessly, his beautiful face completely frozen. This prince has heard that His Imperial Highness is preparing to marry the Empress? Gu Shengyin stared blankly for a moment before smiling indifferently. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, is truly well informed. This was an admission. Qin Kai only felt an indescribable flame rise in his heart. Unfortunately, Gu Shengyin was afraid that this fire would not burn enough and added, It's a pity that His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, will have already left Heavenly Phoenix. I'm afraid that he will not be able to see that scene. In the next moment, her vision darkened and Qin Kai's face appeared in front of her. There was a long table between them. Qin Shueshi gritted his teeth and said, Huang Changa, what did you say a few nights ago? Very good, I haven't forgotten what I said. Are you going to marry the princess? Gu Shengyin paid no attention to his anger, unhurriedly pouring herself a cup of wine. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, we have seriously sought your opinion. She raised the wine cup in her hand and drained it in one gulp. This one is the Crown Prince of Heavenly Phoenix, and it is my duty to help the royal family produce more offspring. Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, forget those words. You'll be returning to the great Qin Empire soon, and I'm afraid we won't see each other again in this lifetime. Her hand was tightly gripped by Qin Quebec. The other party's strength was great, as if he wanted to break her hand. Forget? Qin Kai softly repeated, suddenly smiling. However, there was not the slightest trace of a smile in his eyes. What does your Imperial Highness take this prince for? After teasing me, you want to dismiss this prince with a forget? His long sleeve swept the items on the table to the ground, the cups falling to the ground with a crisp shattering sound. Qin Ke unquestionably kissed Gu Shengyin's lips. There was no doubt that this kiss contained intense emotions. Qin Ke bit her lips without any pity, as if he wanted to swallow her whole. Chapter 636. Gu Shengyin stared blankly for a moment before unceremoniously turning the tables. She wrapped her arms around Qin Ke's waist and pulled him towards her. Bai Xian had been standing guard outside the hall. When she heard the crisp sound of porcelain shattering, she was startled. However, without His Imperial Highness's summons, she didn't dare to casually enter. She could only quietly approach the door and listen. Not long after, she retreated with a red face. Thinking for a moment, she took 2 more steps outside, further away from the hall. By the time this intense kiss ended, the corners of their mouths were stained with blood. Gu Shengyin didn't care at all as she wiped it with her sleeve. Smiling, she said, "Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, is so passionate." Qin Ke stared at her closely. "Chang'e is not bad either." The two looked at each other for a second before Gu Shengyin took the lead to speak. "So, what does your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, mean by coming here?" Qin Ke was speechless for a moment. What did he come here for? He had only heard the news that the Crown Prince was going to choose a successor. For a moment, he was enraged. However, what was he going to say after finding Chang'e? Tell her not to take a wife? Or was it as Chang'e had said that night? Was he willing to give up everything, come to the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty, and become her successor? Seeing him like this, Gu Shengyin understood that he hadn't thought things through. She sneered, "Your Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, since you still don't understand what you are thinking, then leave. This princess doesn't have that much time to waste with you." Qin Ke knew in his heart that she was forcing him to make a choice. However, he couldn't be sure. He didn't know if his feelings for this woman were worth giving up everything he once had. "Bai Xian!" Gu Shengyin shouted loudly. "See the guest out." Hearing the summons, Bai Xian walked in. Sensing the atmosphere in the hall, her heart jumped. Wasn't everything fine before? Why are they fighting now? Qin Ke looked at the woman who had turned her back to him. The heat from their embrace had not yet subsided, but his heart had already cooled. He turned around and walked out without saying a word. After he left, Gu Shengyin, who had been standing the whole time, sat down as if she had lost all her strength. Bai Xian looked at her red eyes and was shocked. "Your Highness?" Gu Shengyin waved her hand. "It's fine. Clean up this place. I want to rest for a while." Bai Xian accepted the order and left. A few days later, the second election in the palace began. The Great Qin's diplomatic mission was scheduled to depart the next day. His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, expressed to the Phoenix Emperor that he was extremely interested in how the Heavenly Phoenix chose its concubines and requested to watch. Knowing that there was something fishy going on between him and his eldest daughter, the Phoenix Emperor naturally agreed. Thus, on that day, the imperial concubines sat in the main seat. For the first time, Huang Chang'e personally appeared at the scene and sat on the first chair on the left. Qin Ke she sat opposite her. The young masters who were selected came forward one by one and bowed to the 3 of them. When they saw Gu Shengyin, the majority of the candidates blushed. Not only were the crown princes of noble status, but they were also incomparably beautiful. Gu Shengyin appeared indifferent throughout. On the other hand, Qin Ke she's aura grew colder and colder as he looked at the elegant, flirtatious, and cold young masters. Since Gu Shengyin didn't show any special interest in anyone, he reluctantly endured. Until one person appeared. Chapter 637. That man had a face as cold as the moonlight. His aura, in particular, made people feel that he was holy and inviolable. Qin Ke she believed that he didn't lose to him in terms of looks, but the other party's aura was the most attractive. Sure enough, he subconsciously looked at Gu Shengyin and found that the other party's eyes lit up. There was a flash of surprise in his eyes. She was interested in this man. This realization made Qin Kei's face darken. The imperial concubine lord seemed to be satisfied with this young master and asked a few questions in succession. After asking, the imperial concubine lord looked at his eldest daughter with an inquiring gaze. That man was clearly standing obediently, but it made people feel that he was looking down at them from above. Gu Xingyin seemed to be attracted to him and said indifferently, "Come closer and let me take a look." The man obediently took 2 steps forward. Gu Xingyin didn't seem to think it was enough. "Come closer." Any closer and the two of them would be leaning against each other. Qin Kei's hand gripped the armrest of the chair so tightly that it seemed like he was going to crush it. Seeing that the distance between the two of them was shrinking, an unforeseen event happened in an instant. The man suddenly raised his head and a soft sword popped out of his long sleeve with a whoosh. The blade of the sword was like flowing water as it attacked the imperial concubine sitting on the chair. The imperial concubine lord cried out in alarm. Gu Xingyin's expression didn't change and she dodged the attack in a flash. At the same time, a few of the young masters who were originally standing at the back flashed out and surrounded Gu Xingyin, who was fighting with the man. It was obvious that these people's target was Gu Xingyin. The imperial concubine lord was already surrounded by the palace servants and the palace guards hadn't arrived yet. Gu Xingyin also felt a little troubled. These assassins didn't seem to be from the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty. Their moves were strange and she couldn't get away for a while. A figure flashed in front of her and a folding fan instantly blocked a dagger coming from the side. "What are you doing here?" Gu Xingyin's expression darkened when she saw who it was. Qin Kei calmly fended off the assassin on the side. "Let me see what kind of charm this young master of yours has." This man, at a time like this, still cared about his poisonous tongue. Gu Xingyin felt a little helpless. She already knew that there was an assassin among this group of young masters. She even let that person get close to her just now to give him a chance to strike. She even knew who the mastermind behind all of this was. The reason why she dared to be so arrogant was because she was confident that she could hold on until the arrival of the guards. However, Qin Kei's arrival had indeed lessened the pressure on her. On the contrary, the assassins on the other side felt that something was wrong. They didn't have much time left. If the guards rushed over, they wouldn't have the chance to attack anymore. Thinking of the consequences of failing the mission, this group of people's attacks changed. They actually directly attacked without any regard for their lives. She would rather risk her own injury to leave a wound on Gu Xingyin's body. Enemies who weren't afraid of death were often the hardest to deal with. Glancing around, she saw that the guards had already arrived at the entrance of the main hall. Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. However, her eyes caught a glimpse of a scene that made her pupils shrink. "Be careful." Qin Kei only felt his body being hugged and turned around forcefully. Following that, he watched as the sharp tip of a snow-white blade pierced through Gu Xingyin's chest. Gu Xingyin's last thought before she fainted was, "System, remove the sense of pain." Qin Kei watched as she closed her eyes in his arms. His entire body was trembling. Chapter 638. The assassins had already been subdued by the imperial guards, but Qin Kei didn't pay any attention to them. He just gently touched the tip of Gu Xingyin's nose with a trembling hand, then suddenly turned around and shouted, "Imperial physician." At this time, the imperial concubine also struggled to stand up and quickly walked to the front of the two people. Looking at his daughter who had been stabbed in the chest, he almost fainted. When the Phoenix Emperor heard the news and rushed over, the imperial physician had just finished treating Gu Xingyin. "How is it?" the Phoenix Emperor hurriedly asked. Her heart was heavy. She had just seen Changa's injury, and it was in such a position. "Sure enough," the imperial physician replied with a grave expression, "Replying to your majesty, the crown prince was injured in a vital part. I'm afraid, it's very dangerous." Qin Kei's body swayed. The imperial concubine looked at him with anger in his heart. "If it weren't for you, my Changa wouldn't, Feng Qing." The Phoenix Emperor sternly shouted, "Changa did it willingly. You can't blame others. If you really want to blame someone, you should put the blame on the mastermind behind this." Her eyes were full of murderous intent. No matter who it was, since they dared to have ideas about Chang'e, they should be prepared to bear the consequences. Qin Kai suddenly smiled softly. His eyes were fixed on the unconscious Gu Xingyin, and he didn't give a shred of charity to others. Imperial concubine, don't worry. If anything happens to Chang'e, this prince will naturally go with her. I won't let her feel the slightest bit lonely. The imperial concubine looked at this noble and proud man with a complicated gaze. From his reaction and Chang'e's unhesitation to block the knife for him in the hall, how could he not know that there were feelings between the two? The Phoenix Emperor didn't say anything. She saw that Qin Kai's mood was obviously unstable, so she sighed and walked out with the imperial concubine, leaving him alone. The palace servants were standing guard not far away, and no one dared to look in this direction. Qin Kai looked at this woman. He didn't expect that at such a moment, she would block a fatal knife for him without hesitation. You win. He suddenly laughed. If you can wake up this time, I will officially answer the question you asked me that night. If you really can't wake up, then I'll accompany you, he said softly. I won't let you be alone. He gently leaned his head against her side. Gu Xingyin was in a coma for 7 days. Even the imperial physicians were at their wits' end. The head of the hospital even apologized to the Phoenix Emperor, saying that he was powerless and that everything was up to fate. Qin Kai sat motionlessly by the bed for 7 days. Just by looking at his complexion, he didn't look any better than Gu Xingyin, who was lying on the bed. He stared numbly at the person on the bed as the imperial physician spoke. If His Highness doesn't wake up tonight, I really, at this moment, Gu Xingyin regained consciousness. She saw Qin Kai's appearance, and a fine and dense pain spread in her heart. This man, at this moment, where was the slightest bit of his incomparably gorgeous appearance? His face was deathly pale, his eye sockets were sunken, and even his lips were cracked and bloodshot. System, how badly did you make me? The system answered honestly, Host, you said that you must make yourself look like you're in danger, and it's best if you can't be saved. I strictly followed your instructions. Chapter 639. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Her system was indeed a straightforward one. That's right, she could have avoided the current situation. There was no need to mention who had sent the assassins that day. Just as they were about to hurt Qin Kai, she had already saved him. But at that time, she changed her mind and sent herself up instead. Firstly, she needed a chance to make Qin Kai see her heart clearly. Secondly, she needed a chance. Secondly, she wanted Huang Minga to be unable to make a comeback. There was nothing more important than herself as a bargaining chip. Anyway, she had already calculated the angle. She was sure that she only looked dangerous, but there was no real danger to her life. Only if she was dangerous enough would the Phoenix Emperor and Lord Feng hate the person behind the scenes. She had even specially instructed the system to make sure that she was safe and sound. But she didn't expect Qin Kai to have such a big reaction. Just one look and her heart ached. She wanted to open her eyes immediately and tell him that she was fine. The system stopped her. Host, please don't fail at the last step. Gu Xingyin's heart calmed down a little and she listened to the system. Late at night. The entire Clear Phoenix Palace was brightly lit. It wasn't just Qin Quebec. The Phoenix Emperor, Lord Feng, and a room full of imperial physicians and palace servants were also standing in the room. The imperial physicians said that if she didn't wake up tonight, it would probably be true. Everyone was watching over her, but the person on the bed looked calm. How did she look like she was about to wake up? Lord Feng couldn't hold back his tears anymore. As the ruler of a country, the Phoenix Emperor naturally couldn't cry. But looking at her red eyes and tightly pursed lips, one could imagine the pain and anticipation in her heart wasn't any less than Lord Feng's. In comparison, Qin Kai was much calmer. But underneath this calmness, there was more pain and despair than hysteria. The head of the imperial physicians came forward and carefully examined the crown prince on the bed. He shook his head and retreated to the side. Lord Feng finally couldn't hold back his tears. Time passed bit by bit. There was still no movement from the person on the bed. The first rays of dawn were about to appear. Everyone no longer had any hope. They were only here to accompany her for a little longer. Water, amidst the silence, a weak call suddenly sounded. Qin Keishi's reaction was delayed for a moment. He even suspected that his heart was filled with too much desire, to the point that he was hallucinating. The Phoenix Emperor was the first to react. She was overjoyed as she said, "Hurry up and bring some water over." After he finished speaking, he shouted to the side, "Imperial physician." No one could tell that the Phoenix Emperor's calm voice was actually trembling slightly. Qin Ke turned her head sluggishly. Although the person on the bed was still weak, she had indeed opened her eyes. 7 days. The tears that he had not shed for 7 days finally fell at this moment. Gu Xingyin's heart ached for him, but she couldn't get up to hug him and tell him that she would never leave him. The imperial physician carefully examined Gu Xingyin's body. His expression was still filled with disbelief. Finally, she bowed to the Phoenix Emperor and said, "Your Majesty, this is great news. His Highness the Crown Prince has regained consciousness and is no longer in danger. What's left is to spend some time recuperating." Chapter 640. His Highness the Crown Prince, whom everyone thought to be incurable, had awoken. Many people breathed a sigh of relief when they heard this news. Most of the people who heaved sighs of relief were the palace servants who served in the palace, as well as some young and childless monarch attendants. These days, because of the assassination attempt on the crown prince, the atmosphere in the entire palace was incomparably tense. Everyone was very careful and did not dare to make the slightest mistake. They were afraid that if they were not careful, they would be punished by the furious His Majesty and Her Highness. Thankfully, His Highness the Crown Prince was safe. There was another group of people who pretended to be jubilant on the surface but secretly hated Huang Chang'e. Why was she so tenacious? These people were, of course, the concubines who had princesses or princesses of the same age as Huang Chang'e. They were the ones who hoped that Huang Chang'e wouldn't wake up. Of course, at this time, even if their hearts were bleeding with hatred, they still had to pretend to be blessed by the heavens. They went to the Phoenix Palace to report the good news to Her Majesty. They couldn't enter the clear Phoenix Palace. The Phoenix Emperor had ordered that no one was to disturb the Crown Prince before he recovered. Of course, Qin Ke wasn't included in this list. At this moment, he was being forced to rest by Gu Xingyin. "If others come in and see you like this, they won't know who's injured," Gu Xingyin said with a smile. Qin Ke only looked at her without speaking. Gu Xingyin sighed inwardly. She had really scared him this time. She softened her voice. "I'm fine now. Ke, don't worry." "Why?" Qin Ke asked. He hadn't spoken for many days. When he spoke, his voice was extremely hoarse. Gu Xingyin didn't know what he was asking. "Why did you block that blade for me?" Gu Xingyin smiled. "If something happened to His Highness, the Prince of Yong, in Heavenly Phoenix, it wouldn't be a small matter," Qin Ke interrupted her. "I want to hear the truth." Gu Xingyin stopped smiling. "Okay, then I'll tell you the truth." "Ke, do you really not know?" She had never hidden her thoughts from Qin Keishi. Gu Xingyin suddenly laughed. "When I was unconscious, I vaguely heard someone say that as long as I could wake up, he would officially answer my question that night." Qin Ke's eyes widened as if he hadn't expected her to be conscious at that time. Gu Xingyin said softly, "I know what you've been doing these days. You've worked hard." Qin Ke laughed. "Do you want to know the answer?" Gu Xingyin pretended to listen attentively. Qin Ke said word by word, "Chang'e, I only have one condition. If you want me, then you have to agree. In this life, there is only me, Qin Keishi. Similarly, Qin Keishi can also swear that in this lifetime, he will only love you, Huang Chang'e." Gu Xingyin smiled, her eyes shining brightly. "Keishi, if it wasn't for the fact that it's inconvenient for me to do this, I'd really want to pin you down." Qin Keishi glared fiercely at her. "Let's see who will press who down." In Clear Phoenix Palace, the two were sweet and sweet. In Heavenly Phoenix Palace, Huang Minga knelt on the cold ground, enduring the fury of the Phoenix Emperor. Minga, you really disappoint us. The Phoenix Emperor looked at his daughter, only disgust in his eyes. Chapter 641. Do you really think that no one knows what you did before? Chang'e has defended you in front of me time and time again. I didn't pursue the matter because of Chang'e. I always thought that you are sisters and that you will repent one day. The Phoenix Emperor seemed to be angry. She flicked her sleeves and threw the teacup on the table. The hot tea splashed on Huang Minga's body and she couldn't help but shudder. But immediately, a wave of resentment rose from her heart. She probably knew that she really didn't have a chance this time. Even if she wasn't sentenced to death, she wouldn't have a good ending. For Chang'e's sake, Mother Empress, you keep talking about Chang'e. Have you ever considered the feelings of our other daughters? Huang Minga threw caution to the wind. The words that she only dared to hide in her heart in the past were now spilled out. Am I the only one who hates her? If you don't believe me, you can ask the other sisters. Who doesn't hate Huang Chang'e in their hearts? We are all your daughters, but in your heart, all of us added together can't even compare to a single strand of Huang Chang'e's hair. The Phoenix Emperor looked at her in disbelief, as if it was the first time she knew this daughter. So, this is the reason why you keep on framing Chang'e? Huang Minga didn't reply, which meant that she admitted it. The Phoenix Emperor trembled with anger. How did I give birth to such a cruel and vicious thing like you? She turned around and didn't look at Huang Minga anymore. Come, pass the imperial edict. The 8th princess, Huang Minga, has no respect for her superiors. She is disloyal and unfilial. She is demoted to a commoner and imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum. She can never be released. Huang Minga collapsed. Imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum, never to be released. It would be better to just kill her directly. The imperial edict of the Heavenly Phoenix Palace was passed to the inviting Phoenix Palace. The Phoenix Emperor closed his eyes when he heard the news. Your Highness, do you want to persuade His Majesty? A place like the imperial mausoleum, the Phoenix Emperor opened his eyes and looked at her coldly. Persuade His Majesty? How? Chang'e is still lying there now. She hired someone to assassinate the crown prince. This evil creature, His Majesty is already benevolent enough not to kill her directly. Of course, he felt terrible. After all, she was a child that he carried for 10 months. But she really let him down. The Phoenix Emperor acted quickly. On the second day after the decree was issued, Huang Minga left Phoenix City under the escort of hundreds of imperial guards. It was said that back then, Huang Minga had knelt in front of the inviting Phoenix Palace for several hours, but the Lord Concubine didn't even see her once. Gu Xingyi knew that in this lifetime, unless there was a special decree from the emperor, Huang Minga would never have the chance to take a step out of that desolate land. Great Qin's diplomatic group stayed in Heavenly Phoenix for an entire month. The reason was naturally because a certain crown prince was injured and needed someone to take care of him. As for why the crown prince had so many palace attendants to attend to him, and why he only needed His Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, the Great Qin's envoys expressed their heartache. Their Great Qin dynasty's most beautiful and noble Imperial Highness, the Prince of Yong, probably wouldn't be able to remain in the Great Qin dynasty for much longer. In the 11th month, Great Qin's ambassadors officially returned. Gu Xingyin, who had not fully recovered from her injuries, insisted on escorting them out of the city. Because of her injuries, she didn't ride a horse. When she got off the carriage, she even put on a thick fur cloak. Keishi, wait for me. I will personally go to Great Qin with a huge gift and ask for His Majesty's hand in marriage. Gu Xingyin held his hand. The Great Qin's envoys all expressed that they didn't see or hear anything. All right. Chapter 642. In the 3rd month of the 11th year of the Phoenix era of the Heavenly Phoenix dynasty, the Crown Prince, Feng Chang'e, personally set off for the Great Qin to seek the hand of His Highness, the Prince of Yong. In the 8th month of the 11th year of the Phoenix era, the Crown Prince held a grand wedding in the clear Phoenix Palace. Not only the Phoenix Emperor and the Phoenix Monarch, but even the common people of Heavenly Phoenix Dynasty heaved a sigh of relief. The Crown Prince was no longer young. He was finally getting married. After the complicated ceremony, the newlyweds, who had received countless blessings, finally arrived at the bedchamber. The palace maids had already tidied up everything and left the place to the two of them after finishing their preparations. Keishi. Gu Shengyin smiled with satisfaction. You finally belong to me. Qin Kai raised his long eyebrows. His beautiful appearance, set off by his red robes, was even more unparalleled. You also belong to me, Chang'e. The hall gradually quieted down. Bai Xian. Lan Xian, another palace servant who stood with Bai Xian on night watch, whispered, Tell me, who do you think is between His Highness and the Crown Prince? She stealthily pointed up with her finger. She couldn't be blamed. It really made people curious. Bai Xian glared at her unhappily. Be careful. If His Highness hears you, he will punish you tomorrow. But soon after, she couldn't help but laugh. It should be His Highness? However, this question became a mystery in everyone's heart. The next morning, when Bai Xian and Lan Xian entered the hall to serve the two princes, both of them looked calm and energetic. There was no sign of anything going on. Gu Shengyin and Qin Kai went to visit the Phoenix Emperor and the Phoenix Monarch respectively. Both of them were very satisfied with Qin Kai. After all, when Chang'e was injured, this child showed deep affection. It was truly moving. After a long time, everyone said that His Highness and the Crown Prince were simply a match made in heaven. The relationship between the two was so good that there was no room for outsiders. The only fly in the ointment was that Zheng Jun's stomach still showed no signs of pregnancy even after half a year of marriage. Even the Phoenix Monarch couldn't help but glance at Qin Kai's stomach when he paid his respects. The women of the Heavenly Phoenix Dynasty didn't have the ability to conceive. After marriage, if the men wanted to have children, they would eat a fruit called the spirit-bearing fruit. After eating it, their bodies would have the ability to conceive. However, it was only the ability to conceive. It didn't mean that the Heavenly Phoenix Dynasty's imperial harem would be pregnant immediately. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many childless emperors' imperial concubines. The imperial concubine couldn't be blamed for being anxious. Gu Shengyin only had Qin Kai as his lord. Everyone could see that the relationship between the two of them was very good. It was really strange that she wasn't pregnant. In the imperial court, there were already ministers who proposed to take in a secondary emperor for the crown prince, but they were all firmly rejected by Gu Shengyin. Only Bai Xian and Lan Xian, who served the two of them, knew the truth. His Highness didn't take the spirit-pregnant fruit at all. Princess, 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 royal highnesses, princesses, princess, fruit, 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 royal princess, royal highness, princess, princess, highness, princess, highness. Princess. Qin's princess of marriage, princess of. But no matter how hard she tried to hide it, Qin Kai she would find out one day. That night, Qin Kai she sat quietly on the bed and looked at her. Why didn't you let me eat those fruits? Gu Shengyin paused. Marrying me has already made you suffer. He was such a proud person. For her, he gave up his noble status and his family to come to this isolated heavenly phoenix. How could she bear to let a man of the great Qin Empire suffer such a thing? Chapter 643. She didn't finish her sentence, but Qin Kai she understood what she meant. He didn't say anything else. He just grabbed her hand, locked her in his embrace, and gently kissed her. In the 4th month of the 12th year of the Phoenix origin, Crown Prince Jingjun suddenly felt nauseous while eating. After calling for an imperial physician, he was overjoyed. The two palaces were overjoyed and endlessly rewarded Clear Phoenix Palace. Gu Shengyin only felt frightened. After everyone left, she looked at Qin Kai, who had been properly placed on the bed. You don't have to do this for me. Qin Kai smiled. When I agreed to marry into Heavenly Phoenix Palace, I was already prepared for this. She didn't want him to feel wronged, but how could he bear to see her endure pressure from all sides for him? A crown prince without an heir, no matter how much the Phoenix Emperor doted on her, he wouldn't be able to tolerate her, right? Gu Shengyin only felt a warm current surging in her heart. She gently leaned her head against Qin Kei's chest and said, I, Huang Chang'e, am so lucky to be able to marry you. Qin Kei reached out and held her hand, a warm smile on his face. How could he, Qin Kei, not be lucky? In the 10th month of the 12th year of the Phoenix origin, Crown Prince Jianghu gave birth to a pair of twins, a boy and a girl, in Clear Phoenix Palace. Gu Shengyin only glanced at the two little children before sitting down beside Qin Kei. She lowered her head and leaned close to his face, softly saying, Let's raise these two children well and not have any more children, okay? Qin Kei smiled and nodded. The phoenix soaring and the dragon soaring were auspicious signs. No one could criticize Clear Phoenix Palace anymore. Those righteous voices that wanted to choose a concubine for the crown prince also gradually weakened. Everyone knew that the crown prince was deeply in love with Crown Prince Jianghu. Even looking at the situation, it seemed that he was going to stop taking in a harem for him. Many people disapproved of this. In their opinion, the crown prince hadn't been married for long. It was the time for the young couple to be affectionate. In addition, Crown Prince Jianghu was born with a heavenly appearance. It was common sense that the crown prince was very important. But women always liked the new and hated the old. No matter how beautiful the face was, there would be a time when it would age. When that time came, how could the crown prince who sat on the throne of the world still be able to hold on? However, Gu Shengyin used facts to tell them what it meant to be the only one in a lifetime. The Phoenix Emperor was in his prime. As the crown prince, Gu Shengyin did not feel much pressure. She even had time to bring Qin Kei and the two children out of the palace to play in disguise. Every time the nobles of Heavenly Phoenix saw the crown prince, they could see that she and His Royal Highness were in love with each other. The two of them were the envy of others. Another 10 years passed. The Phoenix Emperor officially passed the throne to Gu Shengyin and retired to the depths of the palace to enjoy the rest of his life. Gu Shengyin officially inherited the throne of the Phoenix Emperor and changed the name of the country to Fengyong. Using Qin Kei's previous title as the country's title showed that she valued him greatly. On the first day of the new Phoenix Emperor's ascension to the throne, he said something in front of all the officials. In this lifetime, we will only love His Royal Highness. Everyone, in the future, do not mention the matter of the imperial harem. When these words came out, the court was shocked. Many of the old officials knelt and begged His Majesty to retract the decree. Gu Shengyin hated these officials who took advantage of their seniority the most. They relied on their seniority to think that it would be difficult for the new emperor to deal with them. However, Gu Shengyin did not fall for this trick. After he thunderously sent the old officials home to retire, no one raised any more objections. The Phoenix Emperor and Her Royal Highness only had one son and one daughter. Just as the Phoenix Emperor said on the day of her ascension, she would only have Her Royal Highness in the imperial harem. Later, there were rumors that the two of them only had a pair of children because the Phoenix Emperor pitied Her Royal Highness and did not want him to suffer the pain of childbirth. But as for what the truth was, everyone could only speculate from a few records. Chapter 644. Once upon a time, there was an immortal herb that was accidentally dropped into the mortal world by a fairy during a banquet held by the heavenly court. This was an extremely rare immortal herb that was plucked from the Penglai immortal island in the depths of the South Sea. The fairy didn't dare to speak of it for fear of being punished, so she concealed it. That immortal herb fell into the garden of a wealthy family. It wasn't conspicuous among the precious flowers, and it stayed there peacefully for more than 10 years. Until one day, it bloomed. When Gu Shengyin came to this world, she just happened to see this immortal herb bloom. After all, it wasn't an ordinary plant. When it bloomed, it didn't simply bloom, but it transformed. On the long leaves, a white flower slowly bloomed. The bud was very small, but when it unfolded, it seemed as if an endless number of petals were released. The flowers in the garden bent towards her at the same time, and the entire garden was filled with a strange fragrance. This flower fragrance wasn't ordinary. It carried the scent of an immortal. If an ordinary person smelled it, even if they didn't get sick or have no disasters, it wouldn't be a problem for them to prolong their life. Then, that white flower gently trembled twice. A white light flashed, and the flowers and leaves instantly turned into dots of fluorescent light. Within the dots of light, a graceful figure in white gradually took shape. Her white clothes were made of an unknown material, and it was extremely elegant and beautiful. Her sleeves and skirt were full of blooming petals, elegant and lovely. Her hair wasn't tied up, and there was only a white flower crown woven from the top of her head. Under the flower crown was an astonishingly beautiful face. This was a woman who had transformed from words. The moment Gu Xingyin opened her eyes, she looked in a certain direction. Beside the pillar in the garden pavilion, a man in a black robe stood quietly. His face was handsome, and his black eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, staring closely at her. There was an aura as heavy as a mountain on his body. This was something that could only be emitted by someone who had been in a high position for many years. It was very obvious that the scene of her transformation had been seen by this person. "Who are you? I don't think I've seen you before." Gu Xingyin tilted her head to look at the man. The man walked over step by step. He came to Gu Xingyin's side. The strong fragrance from before had already dissipated, but when one walked close to the woman, they could still smell the fragrance. "Oh. What kind of people do you usually see?" he asked with interest. Gu Xingyin frowned as if she was thinking carefully. "There are Cui, Ilan, Changsheng, Master Yun, Madam Yun, Miss Yun." Yuan Rui thought for a moment. Among these people, he only knew a few names. The others sounded like slaves. He was not interested in these things. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Gu Xingyin seemed surprised by his question. "I live here. I have lived here for more than 10 years. I'm Yulan." "Live here?" Yuan Rui glanced at the flower bed and understood what she meant. It seemed that she really treated these two pieces of soil as her home. For some reason, Yuan Rui suddenly wanted to laugh, but he held back. He turned his head and asked, "Are you willing to go with me?" Gu Xingyin was not so easy to fool. "Why should I go with you?" Yuan Rui scared her. "You should know that the people here are different from you. If they know that you are a flower, they will kill you." Chapter 645. What surprised him was that this girl, who looked like a flower fairy or a flower spirit, was not easy to fool at all. Gu Xingyin smiled slyly. "If I turn into a flower, none of them will know." The man guided her patiently. "Don't you want to take a look at the outside world?" Gu Xingyin's eyes widened. She had heard Cui, and the others mention that the outside of the Yun residence was fun. Seeing the longing in her eyes, Yuan Rui chuckled softly, his eyes filled with determination. "If you come with me, I can take you everywhere to play." As a flower, the biggest disadvantage was that she had always been rooted in the soil. Before she transformed, she had never gone anywhere. Gu Xingyin, who was tempted, nodded dizzily. At this moment, someone entered the garden. His Highness Xian King. Her voice came to an abrupt halt when she saw Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin looked at her. She recognized this person. This was the eldest miss of the Yun residence, Yun Chuqing, the #1 beauty of the Ming Kingdom. However, this #1 beauty might be discounted now because of the addition of Gu Xingyin. If Yun Chuqing was a beauty in exquisite brocade clothes, then Gu Xingyin was the uncanny workmanship of nature. She was naturally exquisite, like the moonlight on the horizon, like an orchid in an empty valley. Yun Chuqing's expression was not good. It was not easy for her father to have the opportunity to invite His Highness Sage King into the estate, and he had long instructed her to perform well. If she could gain His Highness Sage King's favor, it would be a good thing for the entire Yun estate. Yun Chuqing was originally very confident. This His Highness Xian King had not taken a wife or concubines, and with her beauty, it should not be a problem to win him over. She had specially dressed up to come here. However, she was not so confident now. This was because there was clearly a beauty beside His Highness Xian King who was not inferior to her, and was even more beautiful than her. She squeezed out a smile. May I know who this young lady is? I didn't see you just now. However, she thought in her heart, she's definitely not a daughter of a good family if she's dressed like that. Gu Xingyin, who had a smile on her face, suddenly became angry and turned around to ignore her. Yuan Rui didn't know why she was angry. He held her back with one hand and nodded at Yun Chuqing. These people are from the prince's estate. They came here to look for this prince. He glanced at Yun Chuqing. How could he not know what she was planning? Yun Chuqing was indeed beautiful, but he now had an even better treasure. He said, "It's getting late. I'll take my leave." Yun Chuqing watched helplessly as the Sage King pulled her away. When they left the residence of Yun, there was already a carriage from the imperial residence waiting outside. Although the people outside were very curious as to why the prince had brought back such an outstanding beauty, they tactfully did not dare to ask any questions. "What's wrong with you?" Yuan Rui asked curiously. Gu Xingyin looked at him angrily. "She scolded me." Yuan Rui thought for a moment before realizing that she was talking about Yun Chuqing. "How did she scold you?" He was very curious. The two clearly did not communicate at all. Gu Xingyin stretched out her hand and pointed at his chest. "She said it here." Yuan Rui's expression suddenly became serious. "She can actually hear the thoughts in other people's hearts?" "Then can you hear what I'm saying?" he asked. Gu Xingyin shook her head honestly. "You're very strange. You're the first person I can't hear." Chapter 646. Gu Xingyin sat in the room and slowly sorted out the plot of this world. Originally, Yulan had also transformed in the back garden of the Yun residence on this day. However, she did not meet Yuan Rui. Yulan, who had mysteriously appeared in the garden of the Yun residence, naturally aroused the vigilance of the people of the Yun residence. Yulan, who was naive and did not know how to win people's hearts, immediately exposed her secret. When she heard that the people of the Yun residence wanted to catch her, she ran away in fear. However, the people of the Yun residence were afraid and went to invite a Taoist priest who came out of nowhere and chased her all over the city. Yulan, who had just transformed and did not know anything, was caught and the weak immortal qi in her body was sealed. She was brought back to the Yun residence. The person who was most hostile to her in the Yun residence was actually the eldest daughter of the Yun residence, Yun Chuqing, because she was jealous that Yulan was prettier than her. She personally scratched Yulan's face and sold her to the brothel. After living a life worse than death in the brothel, Yulan finally took advantage of an opportunity to learn the escape route from the guard's heart and successfully escaped. For the next 10 years, she lived in seclusion deep in the mountains and relied on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to cultivate. Unfortunately, Yulan, whose heart had been corroded by hatred and resentment, had already fallen into the demonic path. She appeared in the Yun residence and killed all 87 lives of the Yun residents. Yun Chuqing, who had already married into a noble family, was naturally not spared. Yulan had killed her 2 children right in front of her and ended her life. Yulan, who had committed such a crime, was unable to escape the majesty of the heavenly Tao during her 100-year tribulation and disappeared. In fact, Yulan was originally a cold moon orchid that was hard to come by in 10,000 years in the Penglai immortal Tao. If she had been absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on Penglai Island, she would have been an exalted immortal after transforming. Even in the heavenly court, she would have been one of the best among the flower immortals after transforming. However, she had encountered such a thing. Therefore, after she died, Gu Xingyin came to her body before everything had happened. However, it seemed that His Highness Sage King's purpose in bringing her along was not simple. Gu Xingyin had no way of probing into his mind, but she had an extremely sensitive perception. Unlike the lovers in the previous world, Gu Xingyin could see the appreciation in his eyes, but in the deepest part of his eyes, there was a thick coldness that could not be melted. Perhaps it was because he knew that Gu Xingyin had a special ability, but Yuan Rui never let random people get close to her. He even accompanied Gu Xingyin for her daily meals. To the outside world, the Sage King's explanation was that his junior sister had come out of the carefree valley to play with him. Everyone knew that His Royal Highness Sage King had once been apprenticed to the mysterious carefree valley. The people of Carefree Valley were eccentric, so no one doubted his words. Gu Shengyin also played dumb with him, dutifully playing the role of a qualified flower fairy who knew nothing about the world, waiting for him to reveal his purpose. In fact, everyone in the Sage King's mansion was very interested in Gu Shengyin, the legendary disciple of Carefree Valley, but they had never had the chance to meet her. Yuan Rui did have his own purpose. He was good to this little flower fairy with a strange origin, just for his own selfish desires. But he didn't know that after doing too much fake acting, it would become real. After a long time of hypocrisy, perhaps sometimes he himself couldn't tell whether this hypocrisy was real or not. Chapter 647. Your Highness, Miss Yulan's talent is rarely seen in my life. A dignified madam said to Yu Wenrui in pleasant surprise. She was the zither master that Yu Wenrui had invited for Gu Shengyin. Yulan was born with an immortal wood body, transparent and flawless. She could understand things like zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting with just a little bit. Every teacher that Yu Wenrui had invited was full of praise for her. After sending off the female teacher, Yu Wenrui walked into the courtyard. The woman, still dressed in white and wearing a flower crown, was sitting there elegantly playing the zither. Her fingers were skillful, and waves of distant and moving music flowed from her fingertips. When she played to her heart's content, she even closed her eyes and gently raised a smile, as if she was immersed in it and enjoying it. Yu Wenrui was unconsciously stunned. This kind of woman, he came back to his senses and remembered his purpose. He remembered his years of forbearance and revenge. His eyes instantly became cold. Yulan. He called out to her gently, his eyes filled with tenderness. The zither music stopped. Gu Shengyin happily opened her eyes and looked at him. You came. Her mind was as pure as a child's. Her thoughts were completely revealed on her face. However, this expression made Yu Wenrui's eyes darken. Didn't you always want to go out and play? I'll take you out to play today, okay? He asked softly. Gu Shengyin instantly widened her eyes. Really? She had been in the Sage King Manor for many days, but Yu Wenrui never let her go out. He said that there were too many bad people outside and he didn't have time. It was not safe to take her out. Seeing her like this, Yu Wenrui unconsciously revealed a smile. Really? When the prince wanted to go out, the servants of the manor naturally quickly prepared the things. Gu Shengyin was asked to change her clothes. According to Yu Wenrui, the clothes she was wearing looked too unusual. If she went out, she had to be careful. Gu Shengyin naturally wouldn't be tangled up in this kind of small matter. For many people in the manor, this was the first time they saw the little junior sister that the prince spoke of. What a beautiful lady. I'm afraid that even the number one beauty in the Ming Kingdom can't compare to her. His Highness has yet to marry and is so good to this junior sister. Could she be our future princess consort? Gu Shengyin listened to their voices one by one. When they entered the carriage, she suddenly asked, "What is a princess?" Yu Wenrui was stunned. Why are you suddenly asking about this? Gu Shengyin blinked. I just heard it. Yu Wenrui recalled her unfathomable ability and understood. He explained, Wang Fei is His Highness's wife. My wife is Xian Wang Fei. Gu Shengyin softly repeated the word wife. Suddenly, her face turned slightly red. I know what the books say. A wife is someone who will spend the rest of her life with you and will never be separated, right? Yu Wenrui nodded. Then can I be your wife? Yu Wenrui looked up in surprise and saw this little flower fairy looking at him with expectation. Her face was red and her eyes seemed to be hiding a pool of water. He was moved for a moment, but then he remembered his own situation. He hardened his heart and only smiled softly. You don't understand at all. There are too many things needed between husband and wife. Although Gu Shengyin didn't understand those twists and turns, she could tell that Yu Wenrui didn't promise her. She suddenly became depressed. Chapter 648. Fortunately, her mood left as quickly as it came. Not long after, when she saw the bustling crowd outside, the lively and novel scene immediately attracted her attention. Yuan Rui ordered someone to stop the carriage, and the two got off in the downtown area. Gu Xingyin was like a child, looking here and there. From time to time, she would take something she was interested in and leave, not knowing how to pay. Yuan Rui resigned himself to his fate and followed behind her as a money bag. She was delicate and beautiful, and her clothes were gorgeous. Those peddlers knew that she was most likely a noble, so they bragged about their things, fooling her with a few words. "This is so sweet, do you want to try?" Gu Xingyin put a bite of sugar-coated haw in front of Yuan Rui's mouth. "Try it." Yuan Rui looked at the sugar-coated haw and felt a bit strange. No one had ever treated him like this. No one would, and no one would dare to give their food to His Highness the Sage King. But looking at Gu Xingyin's pure and happy expectation, he was shaken for a moment, but he still obediently lowered his head and took a bite of the sugar-coated haw. A strong sour taste spread from the tip of his tongue. "Ha ha 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 ha, I lied to you, it's so sour." Gu Xingyin laughed like a kitten that had stolen a fish. Yuan Rui helplessly looked at her, but he was reluctant to spit out the sugar-coated haw. He didn't feel sour, it was very sweet. The two separated at noon. Gu Xingyin seemed to have endless energy, and she didn't have the slightest intention to rest. Soon, it was night. The Ming Kingdom's capital was lit up everywhere. Many of the peddlers packed up and went home. More snacks and fun things appeared on the street. The night market came out. Gu Xingyin couldn't stop playing. Until Yuan Rui called her, "It's late, I'll take you to see something, then we'll go home." "What is it?" Gu Xingyin's attention was immediately attracted. Yuan Rui smiled. "Let's go, I'll take you to a place." The place he was referring to was the high platform of a restaurant in the city. "There's nothing fun here." Gu Xingyin looked around. There were only a few chairs and a small table. There were not even a few stars to be seen tonight. Yuan Rui smiled. "Raise your head." Gu Xingyin followed his words and looked up. There was a deafening sound. She was shocked at first, but soon, she was attracted by the thing that appeared in front of her. Large and gorgeous fireworks bloomed in front of her eyes, falling from the sky with long and beautiful tails. Gu Xingyin stood at a high position, and some of the little tails even fell beside her. She was so happy that she wanted to use her hands to catch them, but she found that when those beautiful little things fell into her hands, they were just a bunch of dust that would be blown away by the wind. But there were even more beautiful fireworks in the air. "It's so beautiful." She turned her head and smiled at Yuan Rui, who was standing behind her. Yuan Rui looked at the woman in front of him in a daze. She had a face like a flower, slim and elegant. Behind her, there were brilliant fireworks. "This kind of scene, this kind of person," he thought, "I'll never forget it for the rest of my life." At this time, Gu Xingyin suddenly walked towards him. Then, she gently kissed him on the cheek. "I read in a book that humans use this to show their love." Chapter 649. "Yuan Rui, I like you," she said. Yuan Rui couldn't hold back and tightly hugged the person in his arms. The two people, under the backdrop of the fireworks, hugged each other. It was the most romantic thing. But Yuan Rui's words were not romantic at all. "Don't like me, Yulan." After a long time, he said. Gu Xingyin had been playing for the whole day and was a little tired. At this moment, she was about to fall asleep. When she heard him speak, she only responded in a daze. Seeing her like this, the worry that had just risen in Yuan Rui's heart immediately disappeared. He helplessly revealed a smile, picked her up by the waist, and returned to the Wang Fu. Starting from that night, some things seemed to have changed. Yuan Rui appeared more and more in Gu Xingyin's courtyard. Gu Xingyin was no longer like before to amuse herself. When she was alone, she would look forward to Yuan Rui's arrival. When she saw him, she would be overjoyed. She would talk to him about the songs she liked, and hope that he would stay with her all day. Yuan Rui felt like he was crazy. He shouldn't be like this. He knew very well what his goal was in bringing this woman to the Wang Fu. But his heart was moved. "Your Highness, don't forget what our goal is." his confidant advised him. These people all knew of Gu Xingyin's existence, but they had never seen her before. Because of her ability, Yuan Rui didn't dare let them see her. Yes, he had more important things to do. Yuan Rui thought of that person's flower-like smile and fiercely closed his eyes. Gu Xingyin hadn't seen Yuan Rui for 3 days. On this day, when a servant girl of the Wang Fu was preparing food for her, she asked, "Why hasn't Yuan Rui come?" In the entire Wang Fu, only she dared to call him this. The servant girl had become familiar with her these days and was very fond of this junior sister of His Highness. She smiled and said, "Miss, Our Highness is about to take a secondary fei. He's a bit busy right now." Taken a secondary consort? Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment. She didn't understand what he meant. However, the maidservant left after laying out the dishes for her. His Highness had said that this Miss Yulan did not like crowds, so they were not allowed to disturb her. After the maid left, Gu Xingyin lazily replied, "System, help me check." She had played dumb with Yuan Rui for so long. It was time to look at the script. The system told her everything. Even though Gu Xingyin had made some guesses from Yuan Rui's words and actions these days, when she really knew the truth, she couldn't help but sigh. The lovers in this world are really scum. If she really was Yulan, she would probably have to enter the demonic Tao again after encountering such a person. Gu Xingyin was used to having a lover who loved her wholeheartedly and obeyed her every wish in every world. Suddenly meeting such a lover, the feeling in her heart was really very subtle. However, subtle was subtle. Gu Xingyin expressed, she was angry. Since she was angry, if she didn't ruthlessly torture a certain person, there was no way to make her happy. Yuan Rui, who was talking with his trusted aide, suddenly felt his body turn cold. A bad feeling spread in his heart. What was going on? He was confused, but didn't care.